Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Bang. Bang. The rune papers exploded in the air, and several liquors sprang out from them, quickly landing on the ground and darting off into the desert, disappearing from sight. Even in such a harsh environment, the liquors were still affected. The gravity here was stronger than in ordinary worlds, which affected their movement attributes. Additionally, the corrosive toxins in the air continuously damaged the liquors. Of course, with the undead effect, the continuous damage was completely negated. Fang Heng, this area is engulfed in sandstorms, and visibility is too low. Survival in these conditions is already risky, and if we encounter enemy attacks, our combat strength will be heavily affected. Captain Zoran also came over with a few soldiers and stood beside Fang Heng. The leader of the inspection department's monitoring team, Shylock, was also among them. He nodded at Fang Heng with a somewhat fawning smile. Shylock was very familiar with Fang Heng's strength and had no intention of offending him. He had come this time just to stay out of trouble. The Emery incident had dealt a heavy blow to the inspection department, and their influence within the Federation had decreased significantly. Right now, the entire inspection department was focused on tracking down Emery, hoping to make up for their losses, and they had no intention of crossing Fang Heng. We've just confirmed that the sandstorm isn't unique to this area but is a global phenomenon. The environment here is extremely harsh. In addition, the sandstorms contain strong electromagnetic interference, which will affect long-range communication, and the range of detection equipment is significantly reduced. And the most troublesome part is that the energy values of our defensive barriers are rapidly decreasing. If we encounter monsters and enter combat, our energy reserves will be depleted even faster, Captain Jisel said, furrowing his brow. The energy reserves we've brought with us aren't enough. We hope to find an energy supply on the planet soon, or we won't be able to last too long. Chapter 2946, Sand and Dust. Captain Jisel had started to regret it. He had underestimated the difficulty of this mission. Fang Heng was very powerful in the game, but now they were outside the game. Facing this complex and harsh environment, Fang Heng probably wouldn't be able to do much either. Don't worry, the reconnaissance around the perimeter can be handled by the summoned creatures. I'll try to find a weak spot in the sandstorm and park the ship there to reduce energy consumption. Fang Heng paused, a hint of a smile on his face. Wait, I think I've found something interesting. Captain Jisel, who had been preparing to return to the ship with his team, stopped when he heard Fang Heng. He looked up and followed Fang Heng's gaze toward the vast sandstorm in the distance. Soon, several shadows leapt out of the sandstorm. They were mutant worms. 3 liquors leapt out from the sandstorm and approached Fang Heng. They opened their mouths, extended their curled and elongated tongues, revealing dark golden ores wrapped within. The researchers nearby quickly noticed the ores, their expressions changing suddenly. Were they mixed ores? Mr. Fang Heng, may I examine these ores? After receiving Fang Heng's nod, the researcher carefully approached, using tweezers to place the small pieces of metal into sealed bags. Captain Jisel asked, "Are these rare ores?" "Yes, from the appearance, they are likely rare mutated tungsten ores. The exact composition of the alloy metal will require further testing, but it seems to have a high content." Upon hearing this, the surrounding players couldn't hide their excitement. Mutated tungsten ore was a material used to create metal with self-healing properties and enhanced defensive characteristics. Whether used for research and development or submitted to the spawns for contribution points, it was extremely valuable. If they could collect enough of this ore in this world, the rewards would be enormous. Alright, take them back for full testing. Fang Heng checked the game records. The liquors had found the ore in an exposed open mining area within the sandstorm. Other than the sandstorm, no abnormal life forms were detected, posing no threat. That was good. It would be much simpler from here on. He could directly summon zombie clones to start mining. This time, Fang Heng was well prepared, as the ship had boxes of combat shovels, more than enough for the zombie clones to use. Additionally, the ship had auxiliary sections for initial sorting of the ores, which could then be processed through alchemy, smelting technology, and spawn or refining instruments to produce final mutated steel, which could be submitted to the spawns for contribution points. More than 10 experts sent by the president's office also showed signs of excitement and whispered among themselves. Captain Jisol asked, Mr. Fang, can the ore collection be handled by the summoned creatures? Yes, no problem. Distribute the tasks, and I'll find a way to send the materials to the ship. Good, we'll receive the ores on the ship and arrange for subsequent sorting, refining, and so on, including the construction of the base area. About 10 minutes later, the lickers began returning to the ship from the sandstorm, spitting out the collected metal pieces. The ship's research team immediately began sorting and screening the ores. The experts, watching the situation from inside the ship, suggested, Captain Jisol, the transportation efficiency of using summoned creatures is too slow. Could we use some carts to carry the ores? We can't. The sandstorm in this world contains corrosive gases. Even alloy metal boxes will be damaged by the sandstorm's erosion. Right now, we can only rely on Mr. Fang Heng's summoned creatures to collect the ores. Fang Heng glanced at the chattering experts and felt a sudden sense of annoyance. Throughout the journey, the experts wasted time asking questions, most of which were trivial matters. He was definitely not interested in dealing with them. Fang Heng truly admired Captain Jisol's patience for handling these experts for so long. The current ore collection efficiency was low because the number of lickers was still insufficient. Fang Heng planned to summon enough lickers to handle the ore collection and transportation while leaving the subsequent sorting, refining, and other tasks to the Federation. This way, both sides could collaborate to maximize efficiency. The expert team showed no signs of stopping and continued, Captain Jisol, could you send a team to accompany us and check the collection site of the summoned creatures? Captain Jisol rubbed his temples, his patience wearing thin. Were these people out of their minds? Staying on the ship was the safest option right now. Going outside and looking for trouble? Unfortunately, these experts were directly sent by the president's office, so Jisol didn't dare to offend them. He could only refuse, currently, it's difficult. Our protective suits can't last long in the harsh environment. The expert team glanced at Fang Heng and said, Captain, please find a way to cooperate. The summoned creatures aren't under any Federation supervision, which is unfair to the Federation. They then looked at Fang Heng. Mr. Fang, what do you think? What's unfair? What kind of supervision do you need? Fang Heng coldly swept his gaze over them and said, would you prefer I hand over control of the summoned creatures to you? You can operate them. The experts pondered for a moment and said, that works. Fang Heng was speechless. These experts actually wanted to dictate control over his licker swarm? He decided not to waste time with them. Wayne and the others couldn't help but laugh at the scene. Were these experts out of their minds? Teaching the boss how to do things? The boss was working with the Federation on the mission as a favor to them, and they were actually getting cocky. Captain Jisol noticed the awkwardness in the air and rubbed his temples again. He was already used to handling these experts from the president's office, so he patiently explained, Gentlemen, let's not bring up supervision anymore. The foundation of our collaboration is trust. The military department is willing to trust Mr. Fang Heng. We can't help with optimizing efficiency, so we'll leave it to Mr. Fang Heng. If there's anything we can assist with, Mr. Fang Heng, please feel free to ask. The experts, hearing Captain Jisol give in, showed dissatisfaction on their faces and started whispering again. Captain Jisol, you're too polite. I'll go outside and check on the transportation situation, Fang Heng said, waving his hand. Wayne, let's go. Let's check the situation outside. Chapter 2947, Wrecking Fang Heng, along with Wayne and the group of players, had just walked a short distance toward the deck when they heard the sounds of an argument between Captain Jisol and the expert team behind them. Judging from what they heard, it seemed that the expert team wanted the Federation soldiers to take the risk and go patrol the mining area. Fang Heng felt disdainful in his heart. Since it was all internal Federation matters anyway, he was happy to let them bicker among themselves. Fang Heng had just reached the deck passage when he saw Su Guantong walking toward him. Mr. Fang. Fang Heng gestured for Wayne and the others to move ahead and asked, how is it? Did you complete the mission handover? Thanks to your help, I have completed the information handover with Dr. Li Zixuan, and the mission is temporarily concluded. Su Guantong glanced at the passage behind, where the arguing voices continued, and lowered his voice, saying, currently, the Western District Federation has restricted the copying and transfer of data to prevent leaks. Dr. Li Zixuan spent half a month memorizing all the data stream information. I cannot record it fully in a short time. I will find a way to report this to Federation headquarters immediately. We may need to escort Dr. Li Zixuan away during the later stages. Good. Fang Heng said, I just checked. The area explored by the lickers is filled with corrosive sandstorms. Also, The terrain and geological structure here have become extremely fragile due to years of erosion by sandstorms. Even after digging more than 10 meters down, it is still loose sandy soil. I am afraid it will be impossible to dig a catacomb passage to shelter a large spaceship in a short time. The spaceship will return soon for a resupply run. You can go back with them to deliver the message. Alright, thank you. 5 hours later. The large spaceship detached 3 of its compartments, gathered them together, and floated in midair, forming a basic temporary base. The biggest problem facing the player team now was the existence of the permanent corrosive sandstorms in this world. Under the relentless assault of the sandstorms, the energy points of the large spaceship's defensive barrier were rapidly depleting and could no longer hold. Moreover, the Federation had not foreseen the severe decay of the world, where even the ground had weathered so badly that it was impossible to build a foundation. After discussions, Captain Jisol decided to leave behind scientific researchers and part of the Federation's military personnel at the temporary base and to use the spaceship to make a round trip to the main base. When they returned next time, they would bring more energy and construction materials. The rest of the people would stay behind at the temporary base, awaiting further orders. Over the past 5 hours, after sorting and filtering by players and engineers, the collected high-quality ores had already filled 12 large crates. Seeing the Federation staff members preparing to take away the crates, Arkley blocked their way, glaring at them fiercely and said coldly, "What do you think you're doing?" The leader of the expert team stepped forward and said, "The spoils will be taken back to the Federation first. These ores have not yet been refined. Submitting them as mixed ores directly to the spawn system would be too wasteful. We have a better hybrid separation and refinement system at headquarters. After refining, they will be made into mineral materials and submitted to the spawns. Once completed, we will provide corresponding Federation contribution points according to the agreed ratio." Arkley immediately sensed something was wrong, glared at him viciously, and looked like he was about to act. "Bullshit. What did you just say? Contribution points? Who the hell wants your contribution points? Say that again if you dare. Were these people crazy about money? These ores were supposed to be exchanged for Spawn's contribution points, but after passing through the Federation's hands, they were going to be turned into Federation contribution points?" Fang Heng heard the argument and walked over, signaling Arkley to hold back, then turned to look at Captain Jisol from the military department. "Captain Jisol, do you think the same?" Captain Jisol was momentarily speechless. Originally, he thought the matter of distribution was no big deal. After all, whatever Fang Heng said would be final, and they had not contributed much anyway. He had not expected these experts to suddenly jump in. Suddenly, Jisol realized that the people sent by the presidential office were probably here from the beginning to interfere with the profit sharing. The presidential office wanted a bigger cut. Idiots. Captain Jisol had already cursed the idiots from the presidential office thousands of times in his heart, but on the surface, he still had to smooth things over. "Everyone, don't be hasty. This is only the conclusion of the expert team, not the final result. The final details may change slightly, but the overall plan won't differ much." The expert team interrupted Jisol without giving him any face, turned to Fang Heng, and continued, "Mr. Fang, this is the division model we experts have concluded after careful analysis. Without the Federation, you would not have been able to enter this world or obtain any of the mining profits. You can rest assured. The Western District Federation will register all collected mineral resources. Your share will not be shorted. However, we must also remind you that the mineral resources of this world belong to the Federation. Unauthorized extraction or use will be regarded as theft, and the Federation reserves the right to pursue the matter." Captain Jisol froze in place, looking at Fang Heng, whose face had darkened, and for a moment, his face turned pale. What the hell was wrong with these experts? Theft? Pursue responsibility? Did they even know who they were talking to? Fang Heng, these people were sent by the higher-ups. They don't know the situation and don't understand. Please don't take it to heart. Captain Jisol hurriedly grabbed Fang Heng and said in a low voice, "Please, for my sake, give me a little more time. I will report everything to the Federation Parliament immediately when I get back. I promise you a satisfactory answer." "All right." Fang Heng shrugged, thinking it probably would not be a big problem. Since they were already here, the Federation could no longer control him. At worst, they would part ways. "I'll be waiting here for your good news." Soon, the spaceship completed its transition preparations. In the temporary base safe zone, Lieutenant Killet and the Federation soldiers staying behind all looked up and watched the spaceship float into the air, then become surrounded by pale white star-like lights before completely disappearing through transition. The Federation research team slowly withdrew their gazes. "Everyone." Killet sensed the morale was low and nodded, saying, "Don't worry. The spaceship is only making a round trip to transport supplies. It is expected to return in about 8 hours. Please remain in the temporary base during this time and do not leave. Understood. Behind the group of researchers, the expert sent by the presidential office, Vian, who stayed behind with everyone else, could not help but reveal a faint sneer after hearing what Khaled said. Chapter 2948, Malfunction inside the base ship. Wayne's team was cooperating in sorting a batch of newly delivered ores. Wayne said, Mr. Fang, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I have a bad feeling. While our relationship with the military department is good, if the parliament doesn't want to continue cooperating with us, it's fine, I've got it under control, Fang Heng reassured him. Fang Heng didn't really care about the Federation's attitude. If the Federation was willing to cooperate, he could save a lot of trouble and provide some benefits, allowing for a win-win situation. It would save time and effort. But if the other side was too greedy, he had at least 100 ways to make sure the Federation wouldn't get a single contribution point. Fang Heng looked at the game prompt. Due to the long-term corrosion effects of the sandstorms on the surface of the world, movement of the liquors on the sandy ground had been severely slowed. Exploration of the entire world had barely reached 5%. There should be more mining areas in this world. So the next step was to find ways to improve ore extraction efficiency. Building roads? Fang Heng rubbed his chin. He decided to take it step by step. You all continue, I'll go outside and take a look. Under everyone's gaze, Fang Heng once again left the safe zone's defensive barrier. The fierce sandstorm lashed at him like blades, and normal people couldn't leave the defensive barrier without protective suits. But Fang Heng was different. The sandstorm couldn't damage his skin. Not far away, the ship's researchers saw Fang Heng through the glass barrier, and their expressions turned curious. Li Zixuan also looked up and stared at Fang Heng for a few more seconds, deep in thought. Not long ago, she had contacted Su Guantong. Su Guantong hadn't revealed too much about Fang Heng's identity, but she repeatedly reminded her that in an emergency, she could seek Fang Heng's help. So what was Fang Heng planning to do? Under the curious eyes of the research personnel, Fang Heng slowly spread his arms, and in front of him, the Book of Elements appeared. Earth Barrier. Boom. Boom 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 boom. With his mental strength poured into it, the sand quickly gathered from the ground and rose up like a towering rock wall, blocking the entrance to the temporary base. This works. Ordinary earth spells would only create a barrier about 2 meters high, but Fang Heng's was more than 10 meters high with a thickness of 2 to 3 meters. The engineers and researchers on the ship were witnessing this terrifying control of magic for the first time. Their eyes widened in shock. Fang Heng frowned slightly. This wouldn't work. The sand was very loose to begin with, and with the continuous sandstorm erosion, the outer layer of the barrier was rapidly being corroded away. Unless he continuously expended mental energy to condense the sand, it wouldn't last long. Fang Heng let go of his hands and stopped infusing his mental energy. The thick 2-meter sand layer quickly thinned before their eyes due to the constant sandstorm erosion, collapsing completely after 10 minutes. What a pity. Inside the base, the researchers all showed disappointed expressions. A researcher stepped forward and said, Li Bo, we've conducted some research on the sand. We've made some discoveries, please take a look. Okay. Outside the ship, Fang Heng shrugged. There was nothing else he could do. For now, they had to rely on the teleportation barrier and anti-gravity system as a temporary base. Hopefully, the Federation could find a way to alter the terrain to help the liquors quickly transport supplies. As for now, they could only rely on the liquor swarm to transport materials slowly. The sandstorm continued throughout the night without showing any signs of stopping. Colette furrowed his brows, feeling anxious. It had already been 12 hours since the Federation's ship was supposed to return with supplies, yet it still hadn't returned. What was going on? Had they encountered trouble? Li Zixuan from the research department had already come to him several times. Anxiety was spreading throughout the safe zone. But due to the local world sandstorm, the communication with the ship's headquarters had been intermittent. Sir. There's news. A researcher's eyes lit up as he reported, then lowered his head and saw the message from headquarters. His smile immediately vanished. Colette rushed over and asked, what did headquarters say? In the temporary control hall, several researchers and soldiers all turned to look at the researcher. Headquarters says. The researcher's face showed sorrow as he said, the ship encountered a malfunction after returning to headquarters. It's under repair right now, and we need to stay here for a while. The ship broke down? They couldn't go back? Upon hearing this, everyone's hearts sank. Colette's brow furrowed tightly, and he sharply turned to look at Vian in the crowd. The ship had been sent to headquarters for maintenance after the insect nest battle, and during that period, there had been no combat. After returning, no repairs should have been necessary. So how could they suddenly find a problem? Something was off. Had the expert team done this intentionally? Vian noticed Colette's gaze and remained calm, with a quiet smirk in his heart. Indeed. It had been their expert team's suggestion. What could you do if you figured it out? Colette asked. How long do we need to wait? The communication was cut off again. Headquarters didn't specify how long it will take, but they've asked us to prepare. The repairs may take some time, and we won't be picked up until the ship undergoes a thorough inspection to confirm everything is fine. The researcher paused, his face pale, lips trembling as he continued. Additionally, headquarters recommends that we immediately upgrade the spawn transition system in the temporary base to avoid any potential danger in extreme circumstances. A researcher couldn't take it anymore and shouted, What do you mean? Headquarters won't be coming anytime soon? Are we being abandoned here? Shut up. Colette glared at him, and his anxiety grew stronger. He asked, What's the status of the transition system? And how is the temporary base holding up? Lee Zixuan walked out from the group of researchers and said, Currently, the energy remaining in the temporary base is 78%. The situation is good, and based on the current status, we estimate that the remaining energy can sustain us for another 52 hours. The mainframe transition system was urgently repaired 2 hours ago, and we can now contact the spawn network and perform basic material transitions. Vice Captain Colette, you should have some spawn contribution points on you. Yes, I have some spawn contribution points, enough to exchange for defensive barrier energy and food. Colette looked around at everyone and continued, Given the situation, we'll stay quiet and wait for rescue. I'll stay here with you, so what are you afraid of? Upon hearing this, the tension in everyone's heart ceased slightly. At least they wouldn't run out of energy or food, and their lives were not in immediate danger. Chapter 2949, Scheming on the surface, everything appeared normal. However, upon leaving the base command room, Colette immediately gathered Feng Heng and the others for a meeting in the conference room. The meeting was deliberately held without the presence of the expert team's Vian. If my guess is correct, it's probably those so-called experts causing us trouble. Damn the presidential palace. Those bone-devouring conglomerates deserve to rot. Normally calm, Colette was visibly enraged as he slammed his fist on the table, his frustration reaching its peak. After listening to the explanation, Wayne calmly analyzed, the ship needing repairs is likely just a ruse. The presidential palace probably just wants to send us a warning to trap us in this world, gaining leverage in the upcoming negotiations. I'm sorry, Feng Heng. Our military department can no longer guarantee you anything. I'm afraid our future cooperation. Colette sighed inwardly, stood up solemnly, and bowed apologetically to Feng Heng, thinking to himself that this team of pigs was simply unmanageable. It's fine. Not a big deal. Feng Heng waved it off. He hadn't expected the Union to play such a trick. Trying to trap him in this world as leverage? To be honest, if it were someone else, they might have had no choice but to accept the Western District Federation's terms, pretend to comply, and plan revenge later. But using this move on him? What a joke. Since the Federation was unwilling to help, he'd do it himself. After all, Feng Heng had already been preparing to go solo. It's fine. Feng Heng waved again, then looked at Lee Zixuan and asked, I heard the first foundational stage of the transition system has already been completed? Yes, the basic system on the ship has been restored. The engineering team worked overnight to finish deployment early. It's confirmed that it can link with the spawn's mainframe, but right now the transition passage is still very limited. The amount of items that can be transported is small, and the intervals between transitions are long. Transporting large items takes extra time. I understand. Good work. Feng Heng turned to Colette and nodded, saying, Colette, after all, you're with the Western District Federation's military department, so whatever we're going to do next it's better that you don't know. Give us some space, and give yourself some too. What do you think? Colette's expression shifted slightly. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want any conflict with Feng Heng. But things had came to this point. Colette took a deep breath and replied with a calm but firm tone, I understand, Mr. Feng Heng. We've let you down. I know my actions may seem ridiculous to you, but still, I must say if I discover that what you're about to do will threaten the Federation, I will do everything in my power to stop you. I have other matters to attend to. I'll take my leave. If you need anything from the military department, feel free to reach out. With that, Colette stood up and left with his team. Feng Heng nodded, motioning for Wei to take his people out as well. Soon, only Feng Heng and Lee Zixuan remained in the meeting room. Dr. Lee, from here on out, I need you to be on my side and get the research team to assist me in full. Lee Zixuan frowned and said, Feng Heng, this is reckless. Turning against the military now doesn't help you, and it'll affect my cover later. Once I return to the Federation headquarters, I'll likely be subjected to scrutiny. That's why I never intended for you to go back. Once this is over, I'll take you with me, away from the Western District Federation. Lee Zixuan raised an eyebrow in surprise. After a moment of thought, she quickly made a decision and asked, I understand. What do you need me to do? I'll cooperate fully. Starting now, I need you to take control of the entire research team. That won't be a problem. I have influence in the team. But I'll need you to help me deal with a few individuals. They'll cause trouble if they remain. Send me their names later. I'll have Colette transfer them out of the research team. Fang Heng nodded and continued, also, the biggest problem right now is the constant sandstorms. We need to find a way to counter them. Any ideas? Yes. Based on the ores we've gathered in this world, we've extracted a material resistant to corrosive sand. By blending this ore material into alloy metals at a specific ratio, we can create a material that withstands the sandstorms here. Lee Zixuan already had an answer and said, but we need time for development, and the lab on the ship lacks proper research tools. Make me a list. Mark the urgency of each item. I'll use the spawn system to exchange for the tools. From now on, our research department will focus on two things: expanding the spawn transition passage, and developing a local alloy resistant to the sandstorms. Understood. Lee Zixuan stood up. I'll return now and arrange the research tasks. In the Federation High Council, the faction represented by the military department strongly protested the presidential palace's latest executive orders, claiming the combat plans were essentially gambling with soldiers' lives. They believed this course of action would provoke a very dangerous enemy. Minister Sigmund, it seems you're getting more and more timid. They're trapped in that star system. If they cry out, no one will answer. Harsh as it sounds, their lives are in our hands. What are you afraid of? During the session, a senator backed by a major conglomerate stood up, scanning the room as he spoke. Give them some pressure. Let Fang Heng know the Western District Federation doesn't have to rely on them. Report. Latest update from the temporary base. The situation is stable. Colette has calmed the team and is awaiting reinforcement on site. And Fang Heng? Has he done anything unusual? No anomalies for now. The senator revealed a smug expression, looked at Minister Sigmund, and said, see? I told you Fang Heng wouldn't dare make any moves. The head of the expert team asked, what about Vian? Any updates from Vian? Vian was the team member left behind at the base to relay information. The officer nodded and reported, according to Vian, Fang Heng appears calm on the surface but is still resisting. Ore collection has not stopped. Also, the ship's research team is closely aligned with Fang Heng and continues development under his guidance. The research team? Who authorized them to follow Fang Heng's orders? Get them to stop. Yes, sir. HMPH, I don't believe they can hold out for long. Meanwhile, back in the Western District Federation, Su Guantong was growing anxious. After returning to the Federation's Star Map Control Center, she had hoped to pass on vital information. But just as she was preparing for return, she was informed that the ship had malfunctioned. Su Guantong immediately suspected it had something to do with the earlier expert team. More specifically, it meant a conflict of interest had arisen between Fang Heng and the Western District Federation. It seemed the Federation was trying to use this as a way to force Fang Heng into compromise. But since it was Fang Heng, he would probably find a way out. Her greatest concern, however, was Lee Zixuan. Lee Zixuan was an exceptionally skilled scientist, personally designated by superiors to be protected. She'll be fine. Su Guantong muttered to herself. She had already warned Lee Zixuan if anything went wrong, she could always turn to Fang Heng for help. Chapter 2950, Construction 5 days later. Everything happened just as Fang Heng and his group had expected. There was still no word from the Federation's pickup ship. When asked, the answer was always that the ship was still under maintenance and temporarily unable to carry out the mission. With reinforcements still nowhere in sight, the remaining garrison soldiers were filled with unease. Fortunately, there was still enough energy and food left to sustain them for a long period of time, and for now, the world didn't seem to pose any threat from the swarm. The temporary base remained relatively safe. But still, when would they be able to return? Colette. Early in the morning, Vian, escorted by 2 soldiers, found Colette. Where's Fang Heng? I don't think I saw him at all yesterday. I don't know. Colette responded coldly. Caught between both sides, he wasn't in a good position either. He knew Fang Heng had been in contact with Dr. Lee Zixuan recently, and their relationship seemed very close. Under Dr. Lee Zixuan's leadership, the entire department had been working around the clock on research, even completing the Tier 2 spawn spatial transmission passage expansion 2 days ago. Judging by everything they were doing, Fang Heng's team of players didn't seem anxious at all. They had occupied a base ship cabin, forbidding others from entering, clearly prepared to stay for the long haul. Colette was indeed curious about what Fang Heng and his group were up to, but he didn't dare to ask. What if he actually found something out? Then would he have to report it to his superiors? Things were fine the way they were now. Just focus on his duties, and ignore everything else. Vian said in a low voice, I heard Feng Heng just left the ship with the entire research team. You didn't know about this either? Huh? Khalid was briefly stunned. Honestly, he hadn't heard anything about that. Vian was visibly irritated. The Federation headquarters had clearly issued an order to temporarily suspend all research tasks, yet the research team had ignored the directive and continued working day and night under Dr. Lee Zixuan's lead. And Khalid had adopted a hands-off attitude, subtly siding with Feng Heng. Whose side was he really on? And now, Feng Heng was leading the research team off the ship. Who knew what they were planning? Report. A soldier hurried into the reception room and quietly reported to Khalid, Sir, Feng Heng's group has been seen transporting some of the reserve supplies out of the temporary base. What the hell? Vian was even more shocked by the soldier's report. They were moving supplies out of the base? Insane. Once the reserve supplies left the energy shield domain, the sandstorm would erode them. Even short exposure could cause damage, eventually rendering them unusable. What was Feng Heng thinking? Let's go. Take a look. Khalid and Vian returned to the base's main control room and used the external cameras to observe the situation outside the base. Outside, Wayne and a team of players were seen transporting metal crates into the entrance of an underground passage not far from the temporary base. Everyone exchanged glances. A tunnel entrance? Could it be? They exchanged a glance, and a strange expression appeared in both of their eyes. No way. Was Feng Heng actually trying to build a base underground? Wasn't it said that the native world's sandy surface made tunnel excavation impossible? Meanwhile, in the underground domain, Dr. Lee Zixuan's research team had pulled several all-nighters and finally completed the development of an alloy metal structure resistant to sandstorm corrosion ahead of schedule. Without an alloy smelting device, Feng Heng simply used an alchemy magic array for preliminary refining. Although it was slower, he had help from his zombie clones. After 2 days of hard work and with the cooperation of the zombie team, they had completed the first step of construction, converting a section of underground space into a base structure using corrosion-resistant alloy metal. After all, Feng Heng had experience building bases from scratch during the early days of the zombie apocalypse. Doing it all over again, this time with numerous zombie clones and advanced elite components from the spawn system, made the job much easier. Now, the researchers followed the alloy metal passageway into the underground base area. Amazing. Without exception, everyone was amazed from the bottom of their hearts. They had been the ones who designed the blueprint. At first, when Lee Zixuan proposed this construction plan, they thought she was crazy. They had previously tested the geology. It was clearly a fragile sandy layer that required large amounts of concrete and corrosion-resistant alloy metal structures to support any construction. Let alone the materials. Even if everything was in abundant supply, it would normally take at least half a year to complete a project of this scale under such harsh conditions. But how long had it been since they submitted the blueprint? At least for now, the entire underground facility was already 80% complete. All the core rooms had been built. Though bare and empty, it was, without a doubt, real and functional. Lee Zixuan's eyes were also filled with disbelief. Everyone, the air purification system inside the underground base has been assembled. The anti-gravity device materials are fully prepared. At this stage, I need everyone to proceed with the installation of the anti-gravity device. Afterward, we'll connect to the star map network and move on to the third stage of the star map transition system. Installing the anti-gravity device required on-site adjustments. Zombie clones weren't intelligent enough, so the engineers had to do it themselves. The researchers all nodded in understanding, then began assembling the anti-gravity device under Wayne's direction, perfecting the underground fortress so that everyone could move freely within the underground safe zones without wearing protective suits. Once they were alone, Lee Zixuan approached Feng Heng and whispered, Feng Heng, after upgrading the spawn network and the transition system to Tier 3, we can indeed handle most of the material transmissions. We can even directly submit ore gathered from this world to the spawn system in exchange for points. But we still can't transmit living creatures through the passage. Yeah, I know. So? That means, without a Federation ship to pick us up, we may never be able to leave this place. If we trade ore for contribution points in secret, the Federation might become even more hostile toward us. Hostile? Feng Heng chuckled disdainfully. Relax. If the Federation doesn't want to come pick us up, let them wait at the base. I have my way to get us out of here. Lee Zixuan was stunned for a moment. After thinking it over, she asked, I see. You're planning to use the spawn network to publish an allied assistance mission? But right now, we lack a ship and the authority to post missions in the spawn network. She thought Feng Heng was being overly optimistic. The Federation's High Council had already blocked off every possible route to force Feng Heng to comply. This was a dead end. No, Fang Heng shrugged and walked toward the right side passage. Come with me. I have something good to show you. Something good? Li Zixuan followed him, suspicious, and entered the sealed hall on the right. This is... As they entered the hall and saw the massive three-dimensional blue projection hovering in the center of the room, Li Zixuan's expression changed dramatically. She turned sharply to Fang Heng, eyes filled with disbelief. A starship. A supersized starship. Chapter 2951, Coordinates. Li Zixuan took a deep breath and looked toward the three holographic projections. How did he get his hands on the supersized starship blueprint that the Western District Federation had spent so much effort acquiring? Li Zixuan had been involved in the project herself. The blueprint had been a gift from the spawns, granted after a series of missions and agreements made with them by the Western District Federation. At the current stage, due to a lack of contribution points to exchange for materials, the Federation had deemed it unsuitable to construct the large starship. It was considered more efficient to build medium-sized starships to boost combat strength. This blueprint was supposed to be classified and stored in the central warehouse of the Western District Federation. Why was it here? How did he get it? What do you think? With this, can we leave this place on our own strength? Li Zixuan stared at the projection for a long time before finally regaining her composure. She nodded and said, if we want the starship to launch, several key components must be in place: a complete ship, sufficient energy, a functional star map transition system network, the spawn star map, and positioning coordinates. The star map transition network system can be exchanged from the internal spawn system. A complete star map network is the target of my current mission. I've memorized it, and in a few days, I can find a way to replicate it. We already have the energy prepared. All that's left is to finish building the starship and find a suitable transition point. Li Zixuan calculated silently, then slowly looked up at Fang Heng beside her. She suddenly had a feeling. Could it be that Fang Heng had planned all of this in advance? Li Zixuan withdrew her gaze from Fang Heng and said, ship construction requires a massive investment of time and energy. I'll need assistance. For some of the more complex precision parts, I recommend directly exchanging through the spawn system. What do you mean we can't go in? Sorry, you two. Arkley stood blocking the entrance of the newly constructed underground passage, grinning at Vian and the other, saying, Mr. Fang said this is our newly established mining zone, can't let anyone else in. Vian frowned and asked, including us? Zaka thought to himself, can't you get a clue? He is clearly talking about you. Mr. Fang made it clear, until a proper cooperation plan is reached with your Western District Federation, we won't proceed with deeper collaboration. It's to avoid any future disputes. But our researchers are in there. Zaka shrugged with a shameless look, is that so? Then I wouldn't know. Maybe they've got a private agreement with Mr. Fang. Either way, I can't let you in. You. Vian felt his anger rising. On their Federation's territory, and someone dared block them. Did they really not know who was in charge? Vian turned to glare at Colette and shouted, Colette. Is your military department really going to allow this to happen? The military was only tasked with assisting in ore collection and remaining on standby. The researchers' current mission has nothing to do with the military, Vian. Fine, fine, fine. So you're with them, huh? I'd like to see how you explain this to the council. Vian didn't dare force his way in and stormed off furiously. Colette nodded briefly to Arkley and the others, then returned to the ship as well. Vian was extremely frustrated. Part of it was Fang Heng's attitude, but more so, it was that someone dared defy the presidential expert group and push back against them. Days passed, and Fang Heng's group showed no signs of backing down. If anything, their stance became firmer, clearly saying, bring it on. Unfortunately, due to the electromagnetic interference in this world, communication systems were unstable. Sending a message back and forth took a very long time. Even worse, the military didn't side with him. Whose side were they on? At the underground passage entrance, mutant worm creatures guarded the area. He only had a few people, forcing their way in was out of the question. Vian returned to the temporary base's main control room. Through the surveillance monitors, he silently watched Wayne and his players making trip after trip, hauling crates of materials into the underground passage. Earlier it had been research equipment. Now it was materials? Vian asked, what's going on with those materials? Those are supplies for our ship. Why are they being taken out? The control personnel replied, those are supporting research materials. I heard they're planning to set up a research base underground for better access to the spawn star map base. A sub-base? What nonsense. He knew the conditions of this world better than anyone. In such a harsh geological environment, they couldn't construct any facility outside without the Federation's support. Digging tunnels? This quicksand terrain would collapse any tunnel immediately. So what were those materials really for? And the military, they were crazy too. Following Fang Heng in this madness? Vian clenched his jaw as he stared at the surveillance monitors. 3 hours quickly passed. Wayne gradually calmed down. But as time passed, he felt a rising unease. Cold sweat began to drip from his forehead. Something was wrong. He had stood here for over 3 hours, watching the whole time, and he could say with certainty not a single researcher had come back out. In this world's harsh environment, researchers needed protective suits to move safely. Theoretically, after 2 hours, the defensive barrier energy would run out, and they'd need to return. So why hadn't they? Vian's fists clenched. Could it be? Had they really built a more advanced shelter down below? Let's go. Take me to the laboratory. Yes. Entering the temporary base's laboratory domain, Vian immediately sensed something was off. The lab usually had military personnel guarding it. Why wasn't there a single person here today? He hurriedly pushed open the lab's main door and was instantly stunned. What happened? The entire lab looked like it had been looted. Every piece of research equipment and data was gone. All of it? So the items being moved earlier were all lab supplies and research tools? Beyond anger, Vian now felt deep concern. He was beginning to realize the situation had slipped beyond his control. The lab housed highly sophisticated instruments. Just minutes of exposure to the outside environment would completely destroy them. Fang Heng and the military weren't fools. If they agreed to move them, that meant Fang Heng had likely built a secure zone outside. At the very least, a temporary safe storage zone. How did they do it? Underground? What kind of advanced tech system did they possess to pull that off? Vian felt a creeping horror growing in him. He didn't even dare to think further. Chapter 2952, A Soil Block Report. Communications briefly resumed just now. The Federation Parliament sent a message instructing us to remain patient and continue monitoring. They believe Fang Heng will soon come to a compromise, and we must not panic. Bullshit. Vian wanted to curse. Panic, my ass. A compromise? Fang Heng had already gone out and started building a base. They were on the verge of being abandoned at the ship's temporary base. Who gave that order? Tell that idiot that Fang Heng is already building a base outside. Minister Enitori issued the directive. The military department also sent a message to Federation headquarters, alerting them that Fang Heng was setting up a base and requesting reinforcements. During previous communications, the higher-ups repeatedly asked us to confirm whether we had personally seen Fang Heng's underground base and to verify its size and scale. One of the accompanying experts remained calm and said, "The minister wants us to verify the accuracy of the information. He suspects that Fang Heng and the military might be setting a trap." A trap? Vian froze for a moment, then turned to look at the empty laboratory hall. They were setting a trap? Thinking carefully. It was possible. Otherwise, why had Fang Heng prevented them from entering the underground area? Wouldn't laying everything out in the open be more effective in breaking their psychological defenses? That was close. Looking back on everything, Fang Heng's construction of an underground safe zone had been extremely sudden. It really could be a ruse. They had almost fallen into Fang Heng's trap. But something didn't add up. What about the research personnel? He had clearly seen them leaving the ship, and the materials from the research institute had also been transported out. Where did everything go? Unless the military and Fang Heng were colluding, hiding the research department personnel on the ship. Wayne scratched his head. The ship's safe zones were actually quite small. It would be hard to hide everyone in there. I understand. I'll get to the bottom of this. Vian nodded and ordered the previous surveillance footage to be pulled up to figure out what had really happened. After checking it repeatedly, it was clear Wayne and his group had led the researchers into the underground pit area, and after that, no one had seen the research personnel again. Was this a deliberate misdirection, or was it real? Vian felt anxious and didn't dare act rashly, so he stayed in the main control room watching the screen. An entire night passed. Vian's eyes were bleary. Apart from Arkley's team and a few mutant worm creatures, no one entered or exited the underground passage, and the ship's safe zone had remained sealed all night. Fang Heng had no idea that a pair of eyes had been watching him all night. With cooperation from the engineers and the research team, the initial setup of the anti-gravity system in the underground passage had been completed. Inside the underground passage, players could now move freely without protective suits. The engineering team continued with more systematic construction, expanding and reinforcing the internal passage defenses. Fang Heng, the modified concrete blocks designed for corrosive sandstorm environments have been completed. We've added special metals to the mix to increase the block's overall strength and resistance to erosion. Good stuff. Fang Heng took the blueprint handed to him by Li Zixuan and nodded silently. He had some knowledge in science and engineering, so he could roughly understand the blueprint. Now that they had anti-corrosion stone blocks, the next step was mass production. They would embed anti-gravity devices inside and then lay the blocks throughout the transportation passages. That would drastically improve our transportation efficiency. Lee Zixuan looked worried and said, according to your plan, the special anti-gravity stone blocks have very low output. One critical step still requires energy conduction through alchemy. Let me give it a try. Got any test samples? Yes. Lee Zixuan waved at a nearby player. Two researchers pushed the cart over with a large, deep gray stone block. The block was cube-shaped and about 1.5 meters long. This one is still a semi-finished product. We need to inscribe an alchemy brand on it to enhance internal energy flow. Completing this step requires at least intermediate-level alchemy. We don't have the talent for that in our team. Not a problem. I've learned a bit of alchemy myself. Feng Hang placed his hand gently on the stone block. Whoosh! A faint light flickered across the stone, and a dim brand mark appeared. That fast? Was it really done? The researchers looked at Feng Hang in surprise. Feng Hang said casually, it's a good piece. How many can we produce? Produce? The researchers exchanged glances, confused. If they had to estimate. 1 every 3 hours. Why did he need so many? Never mind, Feng Hang could tell from their faces. Figure out how to increase production. We need a lot of these anti-gravity blocks, as many as possible. Lee Zixuan added, to scale up production, we'll need more raw materials and casting molds. We'll have to obtain them through the Spawn's transition system. Lee Zixuan and the researchers followed Feng Hang to the Spawn's mainframe exchange zone, where they watched him rapidly click through the exchange column. Maxed out. Everyone stared in astonishment. Good lord. So many materials? Was he setting up a production line? What exactly was Feng Hang planning? With a clear grind goal, Feng Hang no longer felt sleepy. The underground base was split into 2 levels. The researchers usually stayed on the upper floor for various projects. The lower level was still a rough draft, which Feng Hang assigned to his zombie clones for ore refining and inscribing alchemy runes onto anti-gravity stones. The Spawn's transition system ran 24/7, and every time the cooldown finished, new forging tools were transmitted. Using special alloy metals, they added an energy conduction layer and anti-gravity modules, coated the outside with condensed concrete metal mix, and finally applied an energy shield for defense. 36 hours later, the first batch of anti-gravity stone blocks was completed, and the experimental team immediately began conducting tests. Outside the ship, Zaka and his team of players had been waiting. Soon, Lickers dragged the stone blocks out of the cavern to the surface. Though the stones looked heavy, the built-in anti-gravity devices kept them floating in midair, with settings adjustable via internal controls. They had mobile, adjustable, and fixed modes. In mobile mode, the blocks could be easily moved. Zaka stepped forward and gave one a push. It was far lighter than expected, like pushing a small wooden cabinet with wheels. Zaka nodded silently, listening to the scientific team through his earpiece. He turned to the players behind him and called out, "All right, brothers. Let's go. Time to push boxes." The players' job was to lay roads. They moved each anti-gravity block one by one, laying them flat until they turned the whole area into level ground. The anti-gravity blocks were linked through internal energy channels and controlled by the cavern's main control room, where they could be switched to fixed mode. As the ground was gradually covered, players started walking on the anti-gravity platform. This thing actually works. One player looked excited and even jumped a few times. Solid as flat ground. Finally, they could say goodbye to that squishy stepping in poop feeling. Chapter 2953, Track Transmission. Inside the temporary Federation base, Vian had been watching Feng Hang for several nights, so tired that he couldn't stop yawning. During this time, there had been no movement on Feng Hang's side. The more nothing happened, the more uneasy he felt. Just as he was about to go rest, he suddenly saw movement on the surveillance monitors. What was that? He saw Wayne's squad pushing 1.5-meter-long levitating cubes, piling them up on the loose sand outside, laying them out in a full layer. Vian's eyelids twitched. He didn't understand what he was seeing. Were they laying a floor? No, that wasn't right. Why weren't those stones sinking? The gravity in this world was higher, and the loose sand meant that normal stones placed on it would quickly sink like quicksand. Captain, you haven't rested in 3 days. Do you want to take a break? We'll keep watch here, and if anything happens. No need. Vian's bloodshot eyes stayed fixed on the area outside the ship, a cold chill creeping into his heart. For 3 full hours. Vian sat in the main control room, watching as Zaka and the players laid one cement block after another onto the sand. An area the size of a football field. Good grief. Were they altering the terrain? Where did they even get that many anti-gravity stones? As the anti-gravity stones continued to be laid out, mutant worm creatures began moving back and forth, spitting the ores they had gathered to the edge of the field. Zaka split off a group of players to gather the ores and transport them back underground. What the hell? Who said the underground space was just a decoy? They had built an underground base. Vian turned and said, "Notify the leader immediately. I have reason to believe Feng Heng has already established an underground base." Understood. His subordinate rushed out and returned 5 minutes later with a report. "Captain, the leader and the presidential palace have discussed the matter. They want us to avoid any conflict with Feng Heng for now and continue monitoring." Still monitoring? What kind of crap monitoring was this? Seeing that Vian was on the verge of erupting, the subordinate quickly added, "The transition passage is only upgraded to level 3 without battleships. Even if Feng Heng trades ores with the spawns through the transition system, the amount is still limited. The leader believes that without our help, Feng Heng won't be able to leave this place. No matter how many ores they gather, they'll be useless. Feng Heng will eventually come begging for negotiations. We should just keep watching." Vian was at a loss for words. Thinking carefully, he scratched his head in frustration. The logic did make sense. But why did he still feel so uneasy? Wait a minute. What was that? Some kind of special device? He saw on the screen that Zaka and his men had emerged from the cavern again, this time carrying thick stacks of iron sheets. Huh? What was this now? Vian squinted and leaned closer to the surveillance monitors to get a better look. He saw Zaka crouch down and carefully install the iron sheets onto the anti-gravity stones. Ka. Each anti-gravity stone had pre-made slots that perfectly matched the iron sheets. What the hell? Alloy track devices? Once installed, the tracks began moving forward, carrying the stones along and transporting them into the underground passage. The soldiers in the main control room all swallowed hard at the sight. Something felt increasingly wrong about the situation. The base's modifications had expanded from the underground domain to the surface. It felt like Mr. Feng was playing a much bigger game. "Leader, calm down." Nearby, a subordinate saw the veins bulging on Vian's forehead and quietly tried to reassure him, maybe Feng Heng really developed something. Sure, the ore mining efficiency is a bit higher, but they can't maintain it, right? Without high-level transition passages, no matter how much ore they dig, they can't transport it out. They still rely on us. That was true. Level 3 transition efficiency was already the limit. No matter how fast they were at mining, transporting, filtering, sorting, and refining, the ore would still pile up in the underground base, stuck there. "Leader, we should be happy. The faster Feng Heng mines, the more ore we'll eventually receive, right? Let's hope so." Vian took a deep breath and tried to comfort himself. "Report. What is it?" "Detected a strong electromagnetic ripple, possibly from an electromagnetic storm carried by a sandstorm. Our communication with Federation headquarters may be severely disrupted for the next few days." "Report. The headquarters has contacted us. We're to keep a close eye on Feng Heng's activities and not let our guard down." 3 days later. Vian was still in the main control room, watching the outside through the surveillance monitors. Outside the ship, a large area had already been cleared and covered with anti-gravity stones. As predicted, the sandstorm descended. But it had almost no effect on the base. Feng Heng and his people had used the energy circulating within the anti-gravity stones to create an external barrier around the entire base area, including the Federation's temporary base. Anti-gravity stone paths extended in all directions into the sandstorm, with ores being transported along conveyor belts on the stones into the underground passages. Vian watched in disbelief as tons of ore were transported underground every hour, just by visual estimation. He itched with curiosity, wanting badly to see what Feng Heng's underground base looked like. Compared to him, Colette from the military department was far more composed. At some point, Colette appeared next to Vian, stretching and glancing sideways at the monitor. He asked, "What? Another sleepless night? Colette, do you really think this is all normal? From the underground base to the surface anti-gravity paths, and now the giant defensive barrier that covered the whole region. This kind of large-scale barrier and material transport system would consume an enormous amount of energy. Where did Feng Heng get it all? That's not something we need to worry about. The Federation already issued an evaluation report. We're to wait for reinforcements quietly, and until we get further orders, I'm not doing anything with you." Colette shrugged and walked out of the control hall. He said, "With you watching here, I feel at ease. I'll head out first." Vian watched him leave with that indifferent attitude, grinding his teeth in frustration. Chapter 2954, To Grind Underground Base Research Zone. All research personnel, led by Li Zixuan, had gathered in the ship domain area. After spending a large amount of contribution points, Li Zixuan, with the cooperation of several research staff members, had already completed the 3D projection modeling of the ship on the second basement level. At this point, Feng Heng didn't need to say another word. Everyone already understood what he intended to do. Build the ship. And it wasn't just any ship, it was a giant-sized vessel, something never attempted before. The researchers were a bit stunned. Wasn't the original mission to construct a star map communication base and a spawn transition passage? Why had it suddenly become building a spaceship? And in the real world? Even with the assistance of the spawn system, the difficulty of building a ship in reality was at least 10 times greater than in the game. Zaka and a group of players were deeply shocked by the scene before them. Everyone knew Feng Heng had been working on something on the second basement level. But this big? Building a spaceship? Us? Was this really something we were capable of? Arkley's eyes revealed an expression of excitement. As expected, no one in this world could threaten Mr. Feng anymore. The vampires were going to conquer the stars. Everyone, building this spaceship is the Federation's top-secret mission. To maintain confidentiality, you were all summoned here under the guise of a mission. This task concerns the future of humanity. I hope everyone gives their utmost to complete the construction of this ship. The Federation researchers were dumbfounded. Oh. So it was a secret plan by the Western District Federation. That made sense. To keep it secret, the so-called mission was just a cover. They had been assigned from the beginning to build an interstellar warship. No wonder. Could a normal person even pull off a large-scale underground construction facility like this? Mr. Feng definitely had the Federation backing him in secret. Feng Heng listened to Li Zixuan's speech and silently gave her a thumbs up in his heart. Who would have thought? Li Zixuan usually seemed quiet and bookish, but when it came to lying, she could spin tales effortlessly, without a hint of guilt. She had those research staff members completely fooled. Li Zixuan paused and looked toward Zaka and the others, then said, "As for the rest of you, once the ship is completed, you may choose to stay on and become crew members." Wayne and the other players were taken aback and looked to Feng Heng. Seeing him give a slight nod, they felt instantly reassured. Originally, Wayne had been worried that they might be offending the Western District Federation and thought about preparing a backup plan for after parting with Feng Heng. But it turned out, Mr. Feng had already planned their future for them. They were building this ship for themselves. Once the ship was done, they would be part of the crew. Li Zixuan calmly looked around at everyone and then bowed. "Everyone here is among the Federation's top researchers. Thank you for your contribution to humanity. Our transition passage has now reached level 3. It can only carry a small amount of materials, and the passage is being used 24/7 to transport essential shipbuilding materials, so we cannot receive assistance from the mechanical spawn creatures. The difficulty of construction is extremely high. Let's get through this part first. We'll start with the main structure of the ship. Once the main structure is completed, we can immediately upgrade the transition passage. If everything goes well." After a moment, once she was done rallying the researchers, Li Zixuan walked to Feng Heng's side and lowered her voice, saying, "We'll start building from the main hull. If everything goes smoothly, we can barely complete the shell of the ship in about a month. You can think of it as an empty frame. Completing the internal structure and installing all weapon systems and onboard equipment will take over 6 months. Alright. Just completing the outer shell was already enough for now. Once the shell was done, even though the compartments inside would be empty, with no offensive capabilities and only minimal defensive strength, the ship would still be capable of full warp transition enough to escape the Western District Federation's control. And he still had his zombie clone. It could significantly speed up the construction process. With Li Zixuan's motivational speech, both the research team and the players went into overdrive, working around the clock in shifts. The plan was to complete the shell of the spaceship within a month. However, it didn't take long for the researchers to begin looking at Feng Heng strangely. After some time, Feng Heng seemed to magically produce new cabin modules from below. It was clear that these modules had just been constructed. They were still rough and needed more fine-tuning and additional assembly. But considering the bizarre speed at which they were made, some researchers even suspected that there might be several other teams working 4 floors deeper underground to maintain this level of productivity. Otherwise, it made no sense. How is it? The main cabin is usable. It still needs adjustments before final assembly. If zombie creatures could handle mass construction, we could cut the timeline by 50%. I'll adjust the build schedule accordingly. Li Zixuan nodded and called a meeting with the researchers to discuss the next phase of work. Good. Feng Heng continued controlling the zombie clone in the lower domain to build the cabin outlines. Zombie clone. From here on, it was full grind mode. Feng Heng glanced at the game notifications. The world had been mostly explored by now. This world had massive internal resource reserves. Even if he extracted everything as fast as possible, it would still take him about 2 months to clear it all. But something puzzled Feng Heng. During their exploration, The liquor swarm hadn't encountered a single alien creature. Did this world really have no mutant worms? If so, then how did the last spawn mercenary team assigned to the mining mission get wiped out? 5 days later. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Since learning about Feng Heng's plan to build a spaceship, Wayne's team of players had been highly motivated, working harder than ever. Over the past few days, they had watched as the 3D blueprint slowly turned into a physical reality under Feng Heng and the research team's efforts. Soon they'd be able to brag in the future, ever seen a starship? I forged one with my own hands. Zaka thought happily and continued sorting ores diligently. At that moment, Feng Heng was checking the spawn contribution points at the newly built spawn mainframe nearby. In the past few days, even though Wayne and Zaka's team had been working like madmen sorting ores, their efficiency had started to fall behind. The good news was that with the completion of the main ship domain, the ship had just upgraded to the 4th phase transition passage yesterday, and the previously clogged material transmission channels were starting to clear. Maybe it was time to recruit some high-tier spawn robots to boost efficiency? As he was thinking this over, 2 players hurried down from upstairs, looking tense. Mr. Feng, Boss Wayne, something's happened. There's been a sighting of a special creature outside. It might be a hostile native life form. Chapter 2955, Mechanical Core Hostile Creatures. Everyone's expression changed slightly. It had been more than half a month since they entered this world, and they hadn't seen even half a native creature. That in itself was unusual. Feng Heng's eyes also showed a heavy expression as he said, "Let's go check it out." The group moved through the underground passage and reached the surface area. At this time, the entire surface, composed of anti-gravity concrete blocks, was already covered and protected by a visible energy barrier. Colette and Vian, along with the Federation personnel, had also rushed over as soon as they noticed the anomaly. Looking outside the energy barrier, in the distance amid a cloud of yellow sand, a type of black flying creature was slowly approaching the base barrier, floating in midair. What the hell was that? The life form was spherical and levitated high in the sky. As it got closer, it circled the outer energy barrier repeatedly, releasing a buzzing high-frequency noise. Li Zixuan signaled the scientific personnel beside her to collect information and quietly reminded, "Feng Heng, this isn't just ordinary noise interference, this is some kind of unknown language system. It's confirmed that the other side is an advanced life form, at least capable of transmitting external information." Colette brought the military personnel over to join up with Feng Heng. Hearing Li Zixuan's words, Colette immediately ordered the base to broadcast human language to try and communicate with the external life form. However, the life form didn't seem to understand human language. After several rounds of incomprehensible noise broadcasts, it became agitated and began zooming erratically around the energy barrier at high speed. Vian looked up at the black sphere rapidly flying outside the defensive barrier and quietly said, "Looks like things are not looking good." Feng Heng stared intently at the sphere in the sky. He didn't sense any blood aura fluctuation from the black sphere. Vian turned and said, "Extract the information and immediately send the audio data back to headquarters for analysis and decoding." "Yes. Understood." After circling quickly for a moment, the black sphere retreated some distance and launched a black short-frequency light beam at the energy barrier. So it was a machine. The black light beams exploded on impact with the outer defensive barrier, which instantly activated to full power mode, consuming reserve energy to enhance its defensive capabilities. Federation soldiers immediately raised their energy weapons to counterattack. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, the black sphere, floating midair, was small and highly agile, using its altitude advantage to dart unpredictably through the sky. All of the soldiers' light beam attacks were dodged. The black sphere managed to both dodge and counterattack at the same time, continuously launching short-frequency black light beams at the outer barrier. Fortunately, there weren't many of the orbs. The current intensity of attack wasn't enough to break through the perimeter barrier. Stop. After a round of ammunition was exhausted, the soldiers all lowered their weapons. Li Zixuan observed the dodging patterns of the black sphere and frowned, saying, "Their dodges are minimal, and every time they dodge at the last second it must be some kind of energy detection device. The enemy can predict the attack trajectory and perform precise evasions." Feng Heng raised his hand toward the sky. "Mind control." Huh? It didn't work either? The black sphere seemed like a black hole, completely absorbing his psychic ability. Totally ineffective. Interesting. Feng Heng murmured softly, flipping his wrist, and the Book of Elements appeared in his hand. Lightning strike. Boom. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky, directly hitting one of the black spheres. Bang. The black sphere exploded on contact. Feng Heng raised an eyebrow in surprise. The black sphere had considerable spell resistance. If not for his high spiritual power, an ordinary player's lightning strike probably wouldn't have been able to affect it. Well done. After Feng Heng's successful strike, the players' morale was instantly boosted. After suffering casualties, the black spheres suddenly ceased their attack, slowly regrouped in the air, formed a line, then gradually retreated and disappeared into the sandstorm. Retreat? Everyone looked at each other. A researcher stepped forward and reported, "We just uploaded the noise data to the spawn mainframe. It confirmed that the enemy is from the Kangbird Mechanical Legion." Zaka asked, "What the hell is that? A mechanical legion?" "Yes, the Kangbird Mechanical Legion is a mechanical species from an external domain, an already awakened mechanical civilization. There are descriptions of them in the spawn database. Their sense of territoriality is very strong." Colette explained while quickly reading through the translated noise message, then handed it to Feng Heng. The noise just now was a warning from the Kangbird. They believe this planet is one of their resource reserves, and our mining activities have violated their interests. Arkley scoffed and said, "TCH. Just because they say it's theirs, it is? Where's the proof? I say the resource point belongs to us. What we encountered just now was a reconnaissance unit of the Kangbird. Their formal troops are likely on the way." Colette looked at Vian and said, "With our current defense capability, we probably won't be able to hold them off. The Kangbird Mechanical Legion is only one tier below the Black Fog in the spawn's power ratings, equal in threat level to the Seed of Ouroboros. Headquarters is already aware of the attack and should be dispatching a ship to assist in our evacuation." Vian, having suppressed his anger this whole time, now welcomed the attack from the Kangbird as a positive turn of events. It gave them the upper hand. Vian looked at Feng Heng and said, "Once the ship arrives, we'll evacuate immediately. Feng Heng, have your people prepare quickly and also send all the ores you've gathered back to headquarters." Vian already had a plan in mind, putting on a look like he had everything under control. Once the ores and materials were loaded onto the ship, wouldn't the Western District Federation Council have the final say over them? After all that hard mining work, Feng Heng would still have to hand everything over obediently in the end. Seeing Feng Heng lower his head in silence, wearing a heavy expression, Vian felt even more satisfied inside. Ha ha ha. Wasn't this guy always so arrogant? Now he had his day. Colette sighed inwardly, gently patted Feng Heng's shoulder, and advised, "Mr. Feng, let's quickly load the materials and prepare to evacuate." Feng Heng seemed to have just snapped out of his thoughts. He looked up and glanced at Colette in confusion. "What?" Vian sneered and said coldly, "I said, Mr. Feng, the Federation ship has come to pick us up. Hurry up and sort the ore so we can evacuate." "Oh, I got it." Feng Heng flatly refused. Right now, all he was thinking about was how to quickly finish building the ship. He wasn't even considering ores or those minor details. He waved his hand and said, "There's not much ore left. No need for all that hassle. Just follow your evacuation plans. Don't worry about me." Chapter 2956, Ipti Shala. Vian was momentarily stunned, then glared angrily at Feng Heng, looking like he wanted to skin him alive. He hadn't expected Feng Heng to be so defiant. Destroying all the ore rather than cooperating with the Federation? Fine. Then let it be mutual destruction? Colette was a little worried. He thought Feng Heng might be too young and was acting out of spite toward the Federation. He quietly tried to persuade him, "Hey, Feng Heng, the Kangbird are quite powerful. With our current strength, I'm afraid it will be hard to hold them off." "I understand. I have other things to deal with, I'll be going now," Feng Heng said, raising a hand to gesture to Wayne's team. "Let's go." Colette watched as Feng Heng and the other players walked away, worry filling his heart. Was Mr. Feng really planning to go head-on against Kangbird with force? Young people do tend to act impulsively sometimes. The experts sent by the Western District Federation were indeed unpleasant, but it wasn't necessary to go for a scorched earth outcome. "Colette, mind your stance. Don't forget, you're also part of the Federation, understand?" Vian noticed the concern on Colette's face and grew even more displeased, sneering coldly. He had seen with his own eyes how Feng Heng had transported tons of ore into the underground base. With the spawn's Tier 3 transition teleportation system, how much ore could they possibly convert? Probably not even 1%. The rest all belonged to the Federation. Mutual destruction, huh? Even if Feng Heng decided to stay and go down with the ship, so what? By the time the fleet returned in half a month, they could just take all the ore from the underground base. The fish might die, but the net certainly wouldn't break. Vian was already considering how to liquidate the vast quantity of ore. Report. Headquarters just sent word the ship has been activated and is estimated to arrive in 20 minutes. The superiors ordered us to cooperate with Captain Scheisel to carry out the evacuation plan. Hint, the player has completed ship construction, giant-sized. Current completion, 73%. Current combat strength rating, level 0, no defensive facilities installed. Hint, the player may name the ship, Current overall ship status rating, G. Feng Hang stood in the main control room of the ship, a series of system prompts scrolling across his retinal display. 3 days ago, the ship had already passed verification by the spawn mainframe system and was recognized as a preliminarily constructed ship. To be precise, it was just an empty shell aside from the main ship area, research zone, rest area, and material storage zone. No other parts had been modified or detailed. It was like a half-finished apartment, and a one-story one at that. The ship's weapon system hadn't even been installed yet. Feng Hang asked, "Can we execute a transition?" Li Zixuan looked exhausted. She had spent the entire previous day inputting a manually memorized star map coordinate system and passed the verification, enabling the ship to use the spawn star map navigation system. Originally, Li Zixuan had only done this as a precaution, but unexpectedly, that what if had come true. "We can perform one emergency transition right now, but I need a bit more time. Give me another hour. Also, a forced transition will cause some damage to the ship, and repairs will be needed afterward." "Good work. Begin immediately." The second wave of attacks from the Kingbird Mechanical Army could begin at any moment. If it came to a fight, he could hold out for a while. But it would put them in a very passive position. The biggest issue was, what if the Kingbird attacked his ore supply line? He was here to mine ore. If he lost the ore, it would become a meaningless war of attrition. No time to waste. Better to just escape. Find another world, keep mining ore, and continue upgrading the ship. Li Zixuan said, "We still have one problem to solve, the world we're jumping to." Beside them, Arkley looked confused. He asked, "Huh? What do you mean? We can't just go back to our original world." "Impossible. We don't know the dark code that corresponds to our world in the star map coordinate system. If we try to input a random code and brute force it, chances are it won't work. A forced jump like that could land us in a temporal fluctuation, and we might get swallowed by space. Unless there's no other option, I don't recommend it." Feng Hang asked, "Since the spawn star map system is connected, I see that other worlds have posted missions. Can we get temporary coordinates from those by accepting a mission?" "In theory, yes. But Alliance missions are assigned to ships and require a minimum ship level. Our ship's strength is only level 1. We can't accept any missions. To level up, we'd need to install spawn weapons, raise our base rating, and participate in battles to increase combat levels. Our ship isn't fully constructed yet. It only has basic interstellar transition capabilities. It ranks extremely low in the spawn evaluation system." Li Zixuan quickly tapped the console, shook her head, and said, "I just checked. Currently, there are no interstellar missions we're eligible for." Everyone fell silent. Feng Hang asked, "Is there any other way?" Li Zixuan's expression grew serious. She nodded. "Feng Hang, we actually have one coordinate point." "One? You mean? That world, I believe Su Guantong mentioned it to you." Feng Hang's heart skipped a beat. He immediately understood. That one. The world connected to the ancient humans that the Eastern Federation had been searching for. According to Su Guantong, that world had been discovered by accident during a chain of missions. It was believed to be closely tied to human origins, and evidence suggested that a new academic inheritance system could be found there. The Eastern Federation had gone to great lengths to place Li Zixuan inside the Western Federation. One of her key objectives was to find the spawn dark code that corresponded to that world's true coordinates. I already verified it through the spawn network. That world exists. Its danger rating is D level, and its resource level rating is G. We could use it to catch our breath. Alright, let's go there. How much time do you need? About 90 minutes. Okay. Do it. The whole ship sprang into action again. The researchers still weren't clear on what was happening outside. They only heard that there had been an alien attack, and thought the emergency jump had been ordered by the Western Federation. Though a little confused, the urgency of the situation meant they didn't ask questions. The researchers and engineers hurried to prepare for the jump. After about half an hour, 2 players came rushing in to report, "Mr. Feng, the external energy barrier has detected a strong spatial fluctuation. Let's go take a look." Chapter 2957, Kingbird outside the underground base square. The Federation military squad held their energy weapons at the ready, eyes locked on the sky above. At that moment, the sandstorm-covered sky began to twist and distort layer by layer. An anomaly rippled through space, as if it were being pulled back and forth. "Mr. Feng." Colette saw Feng Hang emerge from the underground passage with his group and nodded. "The ship will arrive in 10 minutes. We will initiate the transition back to headquarters immediately. Please prepare as soon as possible." Vian remained silent, standing to the side with a cold smirk. "Feng Hang. You think you're so powerful? What, are you not going to evacuate with the ship?" Vian was just waiting for Feng Hang to beg for help, so he could demand an outrageous price for the goods. Suddenly, The players' expressions shifted. Looking up, they saw black round mechanical orbs begin to emerge from the distorted space in the sky. Not good. It was the Kingbird Mechanical Legion. They arrived so fast? They had expected to evacuate before the mechanical swarm attacked. Who knew the enemy would come so soon? Whoosh! 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 The Kingbird round battle units gathered, unleashing dense short-frequency black beams from the orb-like machines, striking the defensive barrier and exploding in bursts across its surface. Fire! With a shout, the Federation soldiers and Wayne's player team immediately opened fire at the sky. Still ineffective. The black orbs in the air only needed minor adjustments to evade the incoming beams with ease. Vian began to panic slightly and glanced nervously at the time. Less than 8 minutes until the ship arrived. Surely they could hold out with their current strength? Hey, Federation's hired expert. Vian frowned, turning to the voice Zaka. Zaka gave a lazy shrug and said, "Need help? What's the rate? Shouldn't we get some protection fee?" Seeing Zaka, Vian's temper flared again. He scoffed coldly, "If Mr. Fang Hang can repel the Kingbird mechanical assault, then name your price." Such a deal? And so bold? Zaka lit up with joy. He thought, clearly, this guy had never seen Mr. Fang in action. "Hey, and who exactly are you to make such promises?" Zaka grinned. "We won't even ask for contribution points. Just give us those 3 temporary base modules, and lend us the researchers for a year. How about it? Deal or not?" Vian sneered, "If you can actually do it, take them." "Why not?" Zaka turned to Fang Hang with a smug look, raising his eyebrows in triumph. Fang Hang responded with a glance of approval and didn't waste any more words on Vian. He raised his hand, and the Book of Elements levitated before him. Crackling sounds followed. Infused with mental strength, blue electric currents surged from the Book of Elements. Lightning storm. Dark thunderclouds instantly gathered overhead. Boom. 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 The storm clouds raged, unleashing wild chains of lightning. Caught in the electric storm, the black mechanical orbs froze midair. Now! Fire! Zaka's team had been ready. As the mechanical creatures stiffened, they quickly seized the moment to take aim and shoot. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Unable to dodge while paralyzed, the black mechanical orbs were struck head-on by blue beams and exploded midair. "We got them!" Zaka excitedly raised his arm in victory. This was their first time successfully taking down the black orb mechanicals. Aim at those controlled black orbs. The Federation soldiers also quickly redirected their fire to the paralyzed targets under Fang Hang's control. Vian hadn't expected Fang Hang to be capable of fighting these black orb machines. Surprise flickered in his eyes. Zaka emptied a volley of beam ammo, and while switching magazines, he threw a mocking glance at Vian and grinned, "Hey, see that? HMPH. Don't get cocky. The enemy isn't beaten yet." Vian scoffed coldly, though inwardly, he breathed a sigh of relief. Fang Hang may be annoying, but his strength was real. He could at least delay the Kingbird Mechanical Legion for a while. Reinforcements would arrive soon. Then they could evacuate safely. Deep down, Vian never expected Fang Hang to defeat the entire mechanical swarm. "Hey, don't be impatient. We're just getting started." Rage boiled in Vian's chest. He clenched his fists and restrained himself from retorting. The more smug they looked now, the harder they'd fall later. He just hoped they wouldn't end up begging to be taken aboard the ship. Kai. Huh? Vian, deep in angry thoughts, suddenly heard something and turned toward the sound. What? From behind Fang Hang, mutant worms surged out of the underground passage. Mutant worm creatures. One after another, the lickers burst out in a line, quickly forming ranks and occupying most of the square. That many. Vian hadn't expected the underground cave to house so many summon creatures. The licker swarm began setting up in artillery mode. Their spinal muscles bulged, and biological cannon muzzles emerged from their backs, aiming toward the sky. That was biological artillery. Vian stared intently at the licker group. He had never been on the battlefield and didn't know about their long-range capabilities, so he was stunned at the sight. Fire. Whoosh. 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 Red biological shells blasted upward toward the black orbs in the sky. These biological cannons had some tracking ability. The black orbs, with limited dodging capacity against such attacks, had to maneuver much more aggressively. Fang Hang nodded silently. Li Zixuan had been right. The Kingbird machines, being mechanical life forms, could scan and predict mechanical beam attacks, allowing them to dodge preemptively. But against this kind of biological energy cannon, their adaptation was lacking. So, rely on sheer attack density to force success. More and more lickers poured from the underground passage, eventually covering an entire football field-sized combat platform. Fang Hang reached forward once more, condensing an imprint in the air. Lightning storm. Boom. 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 Another massive cluster of Kangbird mechanicals caught in the storm froze in midair, and within just 2 seconds, they were annihilated by the concentrated fire of the liquor artillery. Chapter 2958, Collapse of Talks. In addition to Fang Heng's lightning storm skill coordinating with the attacks, as the attack frequency of the liquor swarm's biological cannons increased significantly, the black mechanical orbs in the air began to sustain casualties from the attacks. Vian watched as the battlefield gradually unfolded, and there was a hint of fear in Fang Heng's eyes. The black mechanical orbs themselves had low physical defense capabilities, and once hit by energy beams or biological cannons, they would shatter without fail. Moreover, as the frequency of biological cannon attacks increased, the mechanical orbs consumed a significant amount of computational power and moved to dodge, resulting in a sharp decline in their attack frequency. Every time Fang Heng cast a lightning storm, large groups of mechanical bodies would be blasted apart. After a while, most of the black mechanical orbs in the air were severely damaged, and their offensive capabilities diminished. Then, they slowly retreated, quickly disappearing into a haze of yellow dust. Good heavens! They really managed to hold them off? Vian was momentarily stunned. Ha ha, what a bunch of crap Kangbirds, that's all. Arkley gave the mechanical swarm a middle finger as they retreated. Zaka walked over to Vian with a smile. So, expert, what do you have to say now? Vian, who was seething with hatred for Fang Heng and the others, tried to hold his composure and gritted his teeth. Don't worry, the Federation will honor its promise to you. After all this is over. At that moment, a powerful spatial fluctuation appeared next to them. A large starship emerged from a white space transition and slowly docked on the platform's right side. The ship's transition was complete. Captain Jisel looked out of the ship and was momentarily stunned. Good heavens! In just over half a month, this place had developed into this. He had been worrying about this kid at home, and now, seeing it, he seemed to be living better than anyone. Jisel personally led his team off the ship to meet Fang Heng and the others. Sorry, we're late. Captain Jisel looked around the surroundings, then shifted his gaze to Fang Heng and said, some things happened, but we did everything we could. Vian also walked over with his subordinates. With the backup of his team, Vian felt more confident and was thinking about how to make things difficult for Fang Heng. Jisel caught sight of Vian from the corner of his eye and said, the formal Kangbird attack line will soon be arriving. Time is of the essence. We need to relocate immediately, and we can discuss everything in detail after we return to the main base. No need. Fang Heng shook his head and said, we have other plans. I agreed with Mr. Vian, so we won't be joining you on the return. As for the Federation researchers in the Western region, they will continue their work here for now. They won't be here for long. The research team will be safely returning to the Western Federation in about 3 months. The Federation soldiers all looked at Fang Heng with astonishment, as though they were looking at a madman. Vian was also surprised and looked at Fang Heng, his eyes filled with disbelief. Leave behind? Was he serious? Did he not fear death? Hey, hey, hey! What are you doing? While everyone was confused, Zaka stepped forward and stopped the soldiers who were about to move the temporary base cabins back onto the ship. You guys, stop. That's our stuff. Huh? The soldiers who were trying to remove the temporary base cabins from the ship were momentarily confused. What did that mean? Those cabins were originally dismantled from the ship. Since when were they yours? Zaka walked up to the Federation soldiers and casually pointed at Vian, saying, this is the stuff this guy lost in a bet to us as payment for our victory over the Kangbird mechanical battle swarm. You can ask him if it's true. Vian, facing the eyes of everyone, looked grim and said, indeed, we had a bet on this. But this is not the time for handover. After we get the ship back to the world, we'll discuss it further. Fang Heng coldly interrupted, there's no need for that. The ship doesn't need to be returned, leave it here, and we'll handle it. Vian clenched his fists, his voice cold. Fang Heng, are you really going to be our enemy, the Western District Federation? Jisel, standing aside, remained silent, adopting a watchful stance. He had no idea what had happened between the two, or how Fang Heng had ended up with his ship as part of the bet. But after a second thought, it wasn't that bad. The 3 ship cabins were a little worn out anyway. The mess caused by the presidential palace would be settled by the palace paying for new ones. Plus, he didn't like the experts from the presidential palace. Zaka sneered, why are you so angry all of a sudden? Losing the bet upset you? Fine. Let's see how long you can hold out here. Also, these researchers are all professionals trained by our Western Federation. If even a single one of them loses a finger, the Western Federation will not let this go. Vian didn't bother to respond further and waved his hand, leading his subordinates back to the starship, leaving Fang Heng and the military department personnel exchanging puzzled glances. Colette walked up to Fang Heng, a hint of concern in his voice as he quietly said, "Mr. Fang, are you sure you won't retreat? Although we just destroyed a batch of Kangbird mechanicals, their battle swarm will only grow stronger. I'm afraid." "Thank you, we'll be fine." "Alright, take care then. We have a mission, so we'll go ahead." Vian returned to the starship, still steaming with anger. He had initially hoped to discuss things with Fang Heng again, thinking that if Fang Heng was willing to back down, he could consider giving him a share of the profits. But now that Fang Heng was so firm, Vian had lost any desire to continue negotiating. On the ship, the expert group returned as well. The atmosphere among the experts was still good. They had heard that Fang Heng had secured a large amount of mining materials on this planet, and they had came to take over the resources. But seeing Vian's state, everyone's expressions turned grave as they realized things weren't as simple as they had imagined. "Vian, what's going on?" "The negotiation failed." Vian answered irritably and quickly explained the situation. Upon hearing this, the experts fell silent once more. What did that mean? The ores were gone? The cabins were gone? Not to mention the resources, but even the research personnel were gone? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. How strange. They had invested so much energy and resources just to come here, but ended up with nothing. Everything was lost. Soon, the military personnel also returned to the starship. For Captain Jisol, there was good news. Since the cabins and the researchers had been given to Fang Heng, only Colette and a few soldiers from the Federation, along with Vian, were left to retreat. In less than 2 minutes, the evacuation was completed, and the starship was ready to make its jump. Report. In the main control area of the ship, a soldier nodded and reported, "The transition positioning is complete, and we are ready to make the spatial jump back to the main base." Captain Jisol nodded softly, looking out the alloy glass barrier at the situation outside the ship, and didn't issue any further commands for the ship to depart. The others fell silent, all gazing out the alloy glass barrier. Chapter 2959, Shaking Vian was also present, his bloodshot eyes fixed firmly on Fang Heng. Fang Heng. He was eager to see what he was truly capable of. So far, there was no special arrangement on Fang Heng's side. The ground was covered with summoned creatures, set up in a defensive formation. After more than half an hour, an operator shouted, "Report. Captain. We detected massive spatial energy fluctuations." Spatial fluctuations. It was the Kingbird Mechanical Legion. Everyone looked up toward the sky. The space high above, shrouded in sand, showed abnormal distortion. More black mechanical orbs slowly emerged from the twisted space. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. After the liquor swarm locked onto their target, they immediately aimed at the sky and fired biological cannons. The black mechanical orbs dodged while launching their attacks. In an instant, the sky was filled with black short-frequency beams of light and biological fireballs. Jisol furrowed his brow. The number of mechanical orbs kept increasing, surrounding the outer layer of the base's energy shield, almost covering it in several layers. Numerous short-frequency beams struck the defensive barrier, causing explosions. The energy value of the overall defense shield was rapidly depleting. At this rate, they wouldn't be able to hold out for long. In addition to attacking the energy barrier, most of the black mechanical orbs began targeting the ore conveyor pipelines outside the defense barrier. Since the pipelines had stopped functioning and had no protective shields, they were all shattered under the short-frequency beams of the mechanical orbs. What were they waiting for? Even so, what would delaying accomplish? Vian coldly watched as Zaka and his group of players below continued their futile resistance, sneering inwardly. When they realized their inability to solve the problem, they would likely come asking for help. Huh? What's that? Suddenly, Vian sensed a violent tremor beneath his feet. Looking down at the source of the vibration, he saw a layer of anti-gravity stone blocks on the ground shaking slightly, moving apart. Wayne was the first to notice that the ground beneath the anti-gravity stones had been hollowed out at some point, revealing a deep pit. What was that? As he saw what was slowly rising from the depths of the ground, Vian's eyes widened in shock. It was a starship? Vian almost doubted his own eyes, wondering if lack of sleep had caused a hallucination. A starship? Where did it come from? Vian was stunned and almost instinctively shouted, "Where did he get a starship from?" A starship wasn't something that was commonly found. The Western District Federation had secretly collaborated with the Spawns for years, and it took a massive investment of manpower and resources to acquire only 7 ships. Excluding the large ship under Jisol's control, the rest were medium or small-sized vessels. But the ship in front of him appeared to be at least a large starship. This was insane. Where did Fang Heng get it from? Could it be? Vian's forehead broke out in cold sweat as a terrifying thought crossed his mind. Could it be that the base Fang Heng had been building underground wasn't a mining facility, but a starship? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. A starship of this size couldn't be completed in half a month, or even 6 months. The players in the starship's main control room were equally shocked by what they saw. This starship was of a high level. At the very least, it was a large one. Although it seemed to lack additional spawn-related equipment or weapon systems, giving it an empty shell appearance, its overall structure was top tier. The expert team from the presidential palace turned to Vian with questioning gazes. What was going on? Vian had been left behind to monitor Feng Heng during this entire time, and now he had the nerve to ask what was happening? The leader of the expert team looked at Vian, his tone already tinged with reprimand. Vian, what's going on with this starship? Vian was momentarily speechless as he stammered, I don't know either. Building a starship requires a key adapter. The spawn's keys are extremely limited, and this short period. There's no way they built it themselves. Could the starship key have been found here? Mission information mentions that several allied mercenary teams sent by the spawns were annihilated here. Could it be that Feng Heng got lucky and found a starship key among the remnants? Everyone fell silent. The probability of it happening was too low. Could Feng Heng really have found it? Was his luck really that good? No one had considered that the starship key might belong to their federation. But even if he had the key, how could he have completed the starship so quickly? He came with nothing, and now he was leaving with a starship? If they'd heard such a story before, they'd have thought it was a joke. Yet, this scene was happening right before their eyes. The starship rose from the ground, hovering above the surface. Lee Zixuan appeared on the ship's right deck, contacting Zaka and his group of players outside via the walkie-talkie. The ship's docking procedure isn't complete yet. We need to manually dock the cabins and teleport them to the transition zone. Move them into the storage area, and you all assist with positioning. Understood. Zaka called out and led his subordinates in directing the entire 3 ship cabins into the ship's transition zone. Vian watched helplessly as the 3 cabins were transported into Feng Heng's starship by the transition beams. Starship recovery complete. Prepare to retreat. Yes. As the last group of players entered the starship, its doors closed. The liquor swarm on the ground continued to maintain their positions, launching biological cannon attacks on the mechanical robots outside the shield, while faint light spots began to appear around the starship. Captain Jisol raised an eyebrow. This was bad. If Feng Heng left now, the outer defensive energy shield would disappear, and they might become the Kingbird Mechanical Legion's next target. Initiate transition immediately. Prepare to return. Yes. 2 white beams of light enveloped the 2 ships, quickly disappearing from the spot. On the starship, the expert team from the presidential palace sat in stunned silence. They had spent so much time, resources, and effort, used countless methods, only for Feng Heng to leave effortlessly on his starship. Along with him, they had lost at least several thousand tons of ore, 3 large ship cabins, and even a group of key researchers. Experts, I need an explanation for what happened. The military will protest at the presidential palace and the parliament. Captain Jisol suppressed his fury. They had spent so many resources, and after all the back and forth, their relationship with Feng Heng had become so strained, and now they had nothing to show for it. Was it all just because of these incompetent fools? If they had cooperated with Feng Heng, would they have ended up in this situation? The expert team will explain. There must be something wrong with Feng Heng's starship. I don't care if his starship has a problem. He's already left in it. Jisol couldn't hold back any longer, interrupting and fiercely berating the group of Federation experts. What good will reporting do? What are you going to do, ram the starship into them? Huh? Answer me? What infuriated him the most was these useless teammates. First Charlene, now Feng Heng. The Western District Federation seemed to enjoy making enemies with everyone. Useless teammates. Can't count on them. Chapter 2960, Entering, Hint, the player transitioned into unknown world coordinates. The transition lasted more than 5 minutes, and a line of game hints slowly appeared on the retina. After a brief bout of turbulence, the ship gradually stabilized. Ahead, through the ship's metal glass window, sunlight began to emerge from the black chaos. Outside the ship was a vast green prairie. Transition complete, initiating ship premonition check procedure. Ship's current damage level is severe, immediate maintenance required. As the transition completed, Lee Zixuan immediately checked various ship diagnostics on the control screen and instructed the ship's control team to begin inspections and develop an emergency repair plan. Wayne and the rest of the players felt a sense of relief. It had been intense. The turbulence during the transition had been so violent that they were genuinely worried something might go wrong with the ship. They had finally arrived safely. And judging by the outside environment, this place didn't look bad at all. After nearly a month of staring at dim yellow dust storms, the sight of blue skies and white clouds instantly improved everyone's mood. Conducting external domain scan. Detected traces of life forms in this star zone. Assessing biological threat level. Threat, none. Atmospheric pressure, 1.1 standard. Due to the lack of resources, the ship was only equipped with the most basic detection instruments. The sensors could only perform basic scans and had a very limited radius. Looks like the environment here is pretty good. Fang Heng nodded toward Li Zixuan. Let's go outside and have a look around. Alright. I'll begin analyzing the safety index of this world and handle the ship repairs. Stay in contact. Wayne and his team stepped outside in protective suits and tried jumping around a few times to get a feel for the environment. Soon, after Li Zixuan confirmed that the air in the current world was breathable, the team took off their protective suits. This world was extremely similar to the one they originally lived in. Fang Heng tried throwing out a few rune papers. The liquor spread out in all directions, searching for usable ores and energy materials. Boss Fang, how about giving us a break? Fang Heng extended his perception and confirmed there were no threatening native creatures nearby. He nodded and said, alright, 2 days off. Phew, vacation time. The players completely relaxed, sprawling across the grassland. After more than half a month stuck in that god-awful dark place sorting ores, they finally got a chance to unwind. Soon, Li Zixuan and her research team stepped off the ship to gather information about the local world. Li Zixuan crossed her arms, feeling the breeze brush her face, inhaling the scent of nature. Standing beside her, Fang Heng asked quietly, how's the ship doing? The ship's damage level matches our premonitions fairly well. If materials are available, we should be able to finish repairs in 3 days. Li Zixuan, in a good mood, chuckled and said, but since you gave us 2 days off, now we'll need 5 days total. Alright then. Fang Heng shrugged, gazing into the distance. Any clues about the ancient humans? I'm not sure. I don't have enough intel. I suspect the ancient humans may have left behind ruins of some kind. Li Zixuan thought for a moment. The detailed information is in the hands of the Eastern Federation, but I believe since our ancestors lived here, traces shouldn't be too hard to find. The ship stayed in the New World for a full 7 days. During those 7 days, the Lickers scouted most of the New World. The planet's surface terrain was vast. The Lickers discovered some wild creatures scattered throughout the world, but their threat levels were low, and there were no large-scale groups, mostly scattered individuals. If this were a game world, this new world probably wouldn't even qualify as a low-level world. The planet's ore reserves were also pitifully low. Most of what was found were low-level ores, and there were nearly no energy crystal ores at all, making it seem like it had already been heavily mined. Wayne's team also led several player search parties, but found nothing. By now, the ship's damage had been fully repaired, and the next stage of shipbuilding, rebuilding compartments and internal systems had begun. Due to the scarcity of materials, many items couldn't be directly forged and had to be obtained through the spawn exchange system. A huge loss. In addition, no traces related to the ancient humans had been found. Fang Heng and Li Zixuan discussed the situation, wondering if there had been an intelligence error. In recent years, I've been undercover in the Western District Federation and haven't followed up on late-stage ancient humans research, so I can't help much. But I can confirm the coordinates are accurate. The environment of this world matches the records. Then let's keep searching for a while longer and hope we find something. Fang Heng decided to stay a bit longer to continue the search, while also continuing ship construction and upgrading its level, until it could accept missions from the spawn system. Just as he left the main control room, Fang Heng suddenly remembered something and slapped his forehead. Idiot. He suddenly realized one thing. He was no longer in the game. While the ship had lost contact with the outer world, he could use the imprint on the back of his hand to return directly to the game. That way, he could contact the Eastern Federation. Time to try it. Fang Heng glanced around, then closed his eyes. This time, things were slightly different from his past entries into the game. After closing his eyes, he saw a gate covered in a black mist. As usual, he tried pushing the door open. The gate opened a crack. Instantly, thick black mist began pouring out from the gap. His vision plunged into darkness. If someone had been standing near Fang Heng at that moment, they would have seen black fog rapidly surge out of him, enveloping his entire body until he disappeared completely. It was unknown how much time had passed when Fang Heng reopened his eyes. Death Realm. He was back. Fang Heng realized he had successfully returned to the game. It worked. But the scene he had seen just before entering the game was a bit strange. Was it because he had unlocked the lock in the real world? Fang Heng pondered this and raised his head, frowning slightly. He remembered his last visit to the Death Realm was more than a month ago. Compared to last time, the aura of death in the Death Realm had significantly weakened. Was it because he took the Death Realm orb away? Mr. Feng Heng. Kotal, having received word from his people, quickly arrived with a few clan members to greet him. Kotal, it's been a while. How's the Death Realm holding up? Kotal sighed internally. To be honest with you, the situation is very bad. Our people have already begun transferring into the New World. Chapter 2961, Transportation. Recently, the situation in the Death Realm had continued to worsen. The war between the Death Realm and the disaster was still ongoing. The armies of the four great empires in the Death Realm rapidly contracted their front lines under the onslaught of the disaster. In addition, due to the gradually deteriorating environment of the Death Realm, the aura of death had become increasingly faint, to the point that soul stones could no longer be produced. More and more members of the Dark Clan had begun choosing to migrate to the New World. After listening to Kotal's explanation, Feng Heng couldn't help but stroke his chin. It was indeed a tough situation. The disaster in the Death Realm was completely different in strength from the disaster encountered during the previous Spawn's mission. One was a fragmented polymer of the broken seed of Ouroboros, while the other was a complete seed of Ouroboros, even accompanied by a cultivator. That said, they had previously attempted to use this Spawn's defensive lines to attack an SS-level insect nest. The effect had been quite good. Could the same tactic be applied in the Death Realm? They were all related to the seed of Ouroboros. If enhancement devices were deployed here, could they weaken the power of the seed of Ouroboros? In the past, due to the high concentration of aura of death in the Death Realm, various technological devices brought into the realm would be quickly corroded. But now, the concentration of aura of death had already decreased by more than 10 times. Feng Heng scratched his head. Perhaps it was worth a try. One step at a time. This time, he would settle the trouble with the starship first. I understand. I'll figure something out. Take me to the teleportation passage. Alright. Soon, Feng Heng returned to Abakaya via Abakaya's teleportation and entered the vampire apocalypse. Then, Feng Heng opened his friend list and found Chen Yu, trying to send him a message. Mr. Feng. Chen Yu, who had recently been assigned to manage the vampire apocalypse's daily affairs, was startled to suddenly receive a message from Feng Heng and immediately contacted him. Feng Heng was always elusive like a dragon. How could he be the one to take the initiative to reach out? It must be something important. Very soon, Chen Yu, under the guidance of the vampires, arrived at the vampire temple and saw Feng Heng sitting on the vampire king's throne. They hadn't seen each other for over a year. He remembered that Feng Heng was just a newcomer in the zombie apocalypse back then. Now, Feng Heng had already reached a height that he could barely imagine. Brother, I've got an urgent matter and need your help to contact your superiors. Tell them, the one Blue Eye asked me to protect is now safe. We've already entered that world together via the starship, but haven't found any trace of the ancient humans yet. We now need their follow-up support. Huh? Mr. Feng, what did you say? Chen Yu, just like a year ago, scratched his head in confusion. Starship? World? Ancient humans? What was he even talking about? Chen Yu didn't understand a word. It's fine. Just report exactly what I said to your higher-ups. Pass it up the chain. Someone will understand. Do it quickly. I'll wait for your reply. Alright, Mr. Feng, I'll go deliver the message right away. Soon, the latest update regarding the Ancient Humans Exploration Project was passed up the chain through Chen Yu's superiors and reached the highest level of the Eastern Federation. The Eastern Federation's leadership was completely baffled upon hearing it and immediately convened an emergency meeting, gathering all departments to form a joint task force. The special task force was full of questions. Feng Heng had already entered that world? Starship? A starship from the Western District Federation? So, what role had the Western District Federation played in this entire incident? For now, the dots were set aside. In fact, the Eastern Federation hadn't expected the ancient humans' plan to advance this quickly. The first step of the plan was to obtain the spawn star map. After getting the star map, they still had to analyze it, locate the coordinates, then find a way to conduct interstellar travel, and finally form an investigation team to explore the target world. But now, the Federation was still stuck at step 1, with no progress. Not long ago, they had heard Su Guotong's report saying she encountered Feng Heng during the star map retrieval mission. Given their good past relationship, they tried asking Feng Heng for help. But what happened? In just half a month, Feng Heng had already taken Dr. Li Zixuan and flown to that world? The team originally responsible for this matter was utterly dumbfounded. Due to the information locked down by the Western District Federation, the Eastern Federation only knew that Feng Heng and Dr. Li Zixuan were stranded in an external galaxy and couldn't return. Regarding extraterrestrial operations, the Eastern Federation was powerless and could only wait. Then came the message from Chen Yu, and they found themselves attending a meeting in total confusion, only to discover that Feng Heng had already contacted the Federation's top leadership. Once the appointments were finalized, the task force leader Liu Haiying immediately gathered all members to begin action. We can't reach Su Guantong at the moment. She should still be in the star map research room within the Western District Federation, likely unable to get away and contact us. In any case, try to establish contact with Feng Heng to confirm the current situation. Also, Chen Yu is granted special approval to join the task force as deputy leader. The team captain rubbed his temples and thought aloud, I'll enter the Vampire Apocalypse game world myself to try and connect directly with Feng Heng. After drafting a preliminary plan, Liu Haiying quickly followed Chen Yu into the Vampire Apocalypse world. Now, the fifth zone of Vampire Apocalypse had become a safe zone under the sole control of the vampire faction. It was jointly governed by the Eastern Federation and the vampires. The vampires who lived in this world, apart from cultivating daily, could after approval by the Elders Council be selected to rise in rank, and then be sent through teleportation passages to external game worlds for various trials. It had essentially become a small headquarters. However, due to the extremely strict loyalty screening among the vampire group, very few players, even those with vampire bloodlines, truly entered the upper ranks of the vampires. For lower-ranked players, though, the Vampire Apocalypse was a paradise. Because daily safety was jointly maintained by both the Federation and the vampires, the crime rate in the entire world was even lower than in the real world. At the Vampire Temple, Liu Haiying led most of the team to meet Feng Heng again. Upon confirming from Feng Heng that they had built a starship and successfully transported into the ancestral world of the Old World, the entire task force fell silent. Well then, Su Guantong did ask Feng Heng to help contact Dr. Li Zixuan, but she didn't tell them to build a starship and directly go to the coordinates of the ancient humans. Sorry, this news is just a little too much for us to process right now. Liu Haiying paused, gathered his thoughts, and continued, Feng Heng, our cooperation with you has always been smooth, and I don't want to hide anything, but we still hope you can keep this information confidential. Of course, go ahead. According to the latest information we've obtained, the coordinate world of the ancient humans is related to humanity's ancestors the Titans. Our research has found that the Titan race faced an extinction crisis. In order to preserve a legacy for humanity's continuation, they chose to spread the human bloodlines of each tribe across different worlds. Chapter 2962, News Ancient humans and we humans are both bloodline branches of the Titan clan who took refuge back then. The coordinates we obtained point to a place where the ancient humans once lived. Later, they got involved in certain events related to the spawns and, fearing potential extinction, were forced to migrate from that world. Before leaving, they left behind something referred to as a legacy at their settlement. We believe the legacy was stored in the ruins of the ancient humans. Feng Heng said, we did a general scan of the world. The environment is very similar to the one we currently inhabit, quite suitable for human life, but we didn't find any traces of other races or clues related to the legacy or the ruins. Upon hearing this, the accompanying players whispered among themselves. That's a problem. Liu Haiying went on to explain, it could be that too much time has passed, or perhaps some accident occurred. Any trace of the ancient humans has vanished. We hope to go to the ancient humans' coordinates to confirm the situation. If necessary, we may even need to construct a special sensing tower there, but that will take a long time. Liu Haiying then asked, Feng Heng, the Eastern Federation doesn't have the capability for interstellar travel. We are also unsure of your ship's condition. If possible, could your ship return to pick up some of our personnel and bring them aboard? Feng Heng shook his head helplessly. No, the ship was just built. It's not yet capable of traveling freely. Liu Haiying scratched his head, momentarily at a loss. A nearby researcher suggested, we could try mapping out the domain terrain and analyze it afterward. That would waste a lot of time. What about remote projection? Set up a remote projection system. I suggest geological analysis instead. The researchers started talking over one another. Feng Heng stayed silent. After a long while, no suitable plan was decided. With no better option, Liu Haiying had to lead his team out of the game temporarily, deciding to go back and research more thoroughly and come up with a detailed action plan in a couple of days. Your Majesty, I have a question. Prince Buller, who had been quietly observing the meeting, couldn't help but speak once everyone else had left the hall. Feng Heng, slightly overwhelmed by the researchers' chatter, rubbed his temples and asked, what question? Buller softly said, why not open the vampire teleportation gate and send vampires there? The vampire clan has seen an explosive growth in strength lately. We can assist you. Huh? Feng Heng opened his mouth, suddenly realizing something. Right. The vampire teleportation gate. He had almost forgotten. Now that his powers had been fully unlocked in the real world, all game abilities could also be used in the real world. In theory, The vampire teleportation gate should work too. He could try opening it and send a group of researchers over to check things out. Feng Heng immediately dispatched vampires to catch up with Liu Haiying and his group before they left the vampire temple and brought them back. Having just left the temple, Liu Haiying and the others were confused as they were hurriedly called back by the vampires. Feng Heng, did you forget to mention something important? I just remembered. While the ship can't return for now, I can use a teleportation passage to send your people into that world. Huh? Everyone was shocked and turned to look at Feng Heng. Was this possible? That's amazing. What method is it? It's a secret technique of the vampires, Feng Heng said, glancing at Prince Buller nearby. However, the prerequisite is that those being teleported must be vampires. Vampires. The player's expressions shifted upon hearing this. Wasn't this a good thing? Becoming a vampire meant instantly gaining enhanced physical abilities and an extended lifespan, something most ordinary players dreamed of. Feng Heng paused and added, to preserve the purity of the vampire bloodline, I can offer a maximum of 30 team member slots. If the Federation agrees, start preparing the personnel list right away. Great. Mr. Feng Heng, thank you for your generosity. I understand. I'll contact the researchers immediately. Also, I must join the team as their leader. Of course, no problem. Feng Heng nodded at Prince Buller beside him. Coordinate with Prince Buller from now on. Also, Buller, prepare a group of vampires. We'll need them to enter the world and assist in the exploration. Buller's expression lit up, and he immediately nodded, yes. As you command, Your Majesty. Feng Heng hadn't expected the offer of 30 slots to stir such a storm within the Federation. The vampire bloodline had become something entirely different. Especially since the vampire bloodline had been enhanced by dimensional power, its effects were powerful. Moreover, the vampires had intentionally stopped expanding their bloodline, further raising its value. In fact, every federal government had been stockpiling vampire bloodline skill books. Each one sold for a fortune on the market. Now, with 30 slots suddenly released, of course, everyone scrambled to get in. And only personnel on special missions could qualify. Who could resist? The uproar even reached the upper levels of the Eastern Federation. In the end, Liu Haiying and Chen Yu had to swallow their pride and offer numerous benefits just to negotiate for 10 more slots. Originally, Feng Heng limited the number to 30 to maintain control over the vampires. But the Federation's offer was too good. Eventually, in exchange for an additional 60 high-tier starship engineers and 30 researchers on a 2-year contract, the Federation was allowed to send 35 researchers and 15 elite Eastern Federation guards, all of whom underwent vampire bloodline advancement under Buller's arrangement. VF-203 star system. As the blood-colored teleportation passage bloomed in the sky, the vampires swiftly entered the world through it. Your Highness. Arkley, upon seeing Prince Buller, immediately knelt with his underlings. Liu Haiying, now the team leader, had also received the vampire bloodline advancement. Only now did he realize how rigid the hierarchy was among vampires. The lower ranks were absolutely submissive to their superiors. Though human players weren't as extreme as NPCs, even Liu Haiying didn't realize how the vampire bloodline was subtly influencing his behavior. At Feng Heng's command, the vampires transformed into bat form and began exploring the world. Chapter 2963, Exploring the Ruins. Compared to the last time they met, Liu Haiying hadn't even realized that his tone had grown more respectful as he spoke. Mr. Feng, unfortunately, we can't use the item bar in this world, so material transportation isn't possible. It's fine. You can use the laboratories on the starship. Let's get started. Alright. Liu Haiying nodded and began instructing the research team to set up the research station. Feng Heng continued to hack. Though this world was a bit barren, at least normal ores could still be found. He focused on filling the dozens of ship warehouses first. During his downtime, he closed his eyes to rest, continuing to cultivate the god-level necromancies step by step. They remained there for over 10 days. After completing a local short-range transition, the starship hovered at the base of a cliff. Players gradually leapt down from the deck of the ship. Based on descriptions from the ancient map, the entire research team conducted detailed surveying and finally confirmed the approximate location. It was at the base of a large mountain range. This kind of remote, hidden place was somewhere the Lickers could probably never find on their own. After a meticulous search by the vampires, anomalies were soon discovered. Your Majesty, please come with me. Everyone followed a vampire to a protruding section of the cliff wall. Looking up, there were rough and jagged markings branded into the rocky surface. Researchers brought by Liu Haiying immediately began taking photos from multiple angles, archiving the data, and comparing images to translate the ancient script. Feng Heng stood quietly, observing. The cliff wall was overgrown with weeds, and large, crisscrossing marks looked odd indeed. But were those really characters? They spent a long time verifying and recording, and then the research team set up a temporary base at the foot of the cliff. After 2 full days of discussion and analysis, they were finally ready to act by the 3rd afternoon. Before everyone's eyes, Liu Haiying walked up to the cliff wall, cut his palm with a knife, and pressed his hand against the rock face. Blood slowly trickled down the cliff wall. Ka! A faint light glowed from the rock. The light blossomed. Ka ka ka, ka ka ka. Fang Heng narrowed his eyes. An alchemy magic array? It actually existed? The sides of the cliff wall slowly extended outward, revealing an interior passage. It worked. Cheers erupted from the surrounding researchers. Fang Heng nodded at Prince Buller. Go in and check. Yes. Prince Buller led several vampires into the tunnel to scout. Once they confirmed there was no danger, the others began to enter the cliff passage as well. The cave inside was massive. Every wall was carved with murals. Due to their age, most murals were heavily damaged. Titan Li Zixuan, part of the team, observed the murals and murmured softly. Dr. Li, did you find something? The fact that our blood can open the cliff passage proves we truly are descendants of the Titans. Dr. Li looked up at the murals and said, these murals must have been left by the Titans. From our data, the ancient Titans were roughly 3 times our size. The Titans faced an existential threat. To prevent total extinction, they spread their bloodlines before the crisis arrived, hoping their descendants could one day restore their lost glory. Zaka, listening nearby, found it hard to believe. He sneered and muttered, what is this? I just came here for a mission, and now you're telling me to recognize my ancestors. Li Zixuan glanced at Zaka and shook her head, saying, whether you believe it or not, Titan blood flows in your veins, though perhaps very diluted. Fang Heng didn't care about the ancestry part and asked, is there any information related to inheritance? I think it's a power derived from the Titan bloodline. Due to dilution, the Titan bloodline gradually lost its strength. Li Zixuan kept studying the murals. Ancient humans carried partial memories and inheritance from the Titans. They left behind methods to awaken traces of the bloodline. Titan inheritance? Could that really exist? It sounded like something that could enhance one's power. Wayne and the other players exchanged looks, immediately intrigued. Everyone, come here. Look at this. A researcher in a deeper part of the cave discovered something and called everyone over. Fang Heng followed the group and saw a towering stone pillar standing at the cave's base. The pillar was covered in dense black markings, with rows of sharp barbs protruding outward from its edges. Li Zixuan examined it and exchanged looks with the other researchers before confirming, this looks very much like the legacy we're searching for. I'll give it a try. Liu Haiying stepped forward, reached for one of the protruding barbs, and grasped it tightly. Kai. Liu Haiying furrowed his brow slightly. Tiny needles sprang from the barb, piercing his skin. Bright red blood flowed along the barb and slowly trickled down the stone pillar. Drip. Only then did they notice that beneath the pillar was a hollow section, and a stone cup was placed at its base. The blood trickled down into the cup, drop by drop. Buzz. Immediately, the entire pillar glowed with a gentle light. Huh? Was that an energy reaction? Fang Heng's mind stirred. A special energy radiated from the stone pillar. It was strange. This energy didn't belong to any known category. It felt more like an attribute-less energy. The energy was absorbed by the body and rapidly flowed into the sea of consciousness. Huh? Fang Heng could clearly perceive the energy settling within his sea of consciousness and becoming accessible to his body. He just wasn't sure yet how to fully utilize it. At the simplest level, it could be used for mental defense, automatically resisting spiritual attacks. As for active use, he didn't yet know how. While he pondered this, a nearby researcher let out a soft moan of comfort. Huh? Most of the researchers hadn't undergone any cultivation and had nearly no development of their sea of consciousness, let alone control over it. Looking closer, Fang Heng realized the energy was modifying their bodies. Before he could experiment further, Wayne had already shouted excitedly. Everyone! Control the energy flow from your sea of consciousness into your body, it can awaken and enhance your bloodline. Fang Heng immediately tried directing the energy from his sea of consciousness along his meridians throughout his body. A gentle aura steadily enhanced both his body and his sea of consciousness. Chapter 2964, Bloodline Revival. Hint: the player is awakening the bloodline. Hint: the player's current bloodline awakening progress is 0.06%. Hint: due to the awakening of the player's bloodline, the player gains 0.1 basic strength. Fang Heng suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the stone pillar. The stone pillar was still continuously releasing energy. So that was the source of the energy. Fang Heng observed the flow of energy with his perception. Upon closer inspection, he saw that the stone pillar was inlaid with small fragments of crystal. The energy was leaking from those crystal fragments. It wasn't much. It could even be described as scarce. Even if he absorbed it all alone, it would barely push the bloodline awakening progress to 10%. Feng Heng closed his eyes again to continue absorbing the energy. Over 10 minutes later, the stone pillar stopped releasing energy. Just as he had expected. The energy in the crystal fragments was depleted, and his bloodline awakening progress rose to 3.42%, increasing his strength attribute by 1.6. The surrounding players also opened their eyes one after another. Amazing. If I'd known it would boost my stats, I'd have been more eager. Zaka felt the change in his physical strength and sighed in satisfaction. This ancestor is reliable, I'm sold. Liu Haiying said, Mr. Feng Heng, the stone pillar should be the inheritance we were looking for. The energy bodies released from within can awaken our bloodlines. This energy gradually accumulates in the stone pillar over time. The Eastern Federation needs some time to analyze and test it. Alright, of course. Although they had found the so-called legacy item, the improvement was still quite limited for him. But for the human race as a whole, it might have opened up a new path toward bloodline power. The researchers were all very excited. A major discovery. If they could really develop a method to fully awaken the bloodline, humanity's overall strength would see a dramatic increase. While the researchers discussed follow-up research plans and tried to determine whether the stone pillar could be transported back, Wayne noticed something in a mural near the edge of the stone pillar, squinted his eyes, and pointed to the dark fog nearby. What's that? Black fog? Li Zixuan walked to the stone wall and looked up at the mural, falling silent for a moment. Feng Heng followed her, studying the details depicted in the artwork. The painting was weathered, but many distinctive elements were still recognizable. For example, the Titan race. The migration of the ancient humans. The invasion of extraterrestrial life forms. And the spreading black fog. Feng Heng turned to Li Zixuan and asked, is that the black fog game? I remember Su Guantong mentioned it to me. He said there might be clues here about the truth behind the black fog game. I'll explain. Liu Haiying stepped up and said, when we first started researching the ancient humans, we also found records related to the black fog game. Though the data was collected a long time ago, it wasn't until recent years that we managed to complete the translations and understand the content. Yes, just as you're thinking, the black fog game already existed in the time of the ancient humans. They even tried to control it. Li Zixuan continued, but then certain events occurred, leading the ancient humans to believe that the black fog game was extremely dangerous. They tried to escape its influence. Feng Heng asked, what kind of danger? Based on our translations, we understand that the ancient humans believed that upon first entering the black fog game, players could gain special abilities, but participants would also unknowingly be affected and gradually become part of the game. They believed the black fog was devouring the world in a bizarre, ritual-like manner, slowly transforming the entire world into another form, one belonging to the black fog. The group listened, puzzled. What did it mean to become part of the game? And what was that about transforming the world into a black fog form? The ancient humans believed that deep participation in the game would cause them to be assimilated into the black fog. They once tried to stop the spread of the black fog, but clearly, it wasn't so easily contained. Wayne asked, are you saying the migration of the ancient humans was related to the black fog game? Very likely, Liu Haiying said grimly. They believed that assimilation by the black fog game was terrifying. We still don't know whether we've already begun to be assimilated, but our world is clearly under threat. Supervisor Liu. A voice called out from behind, filled with excitement. Please come and take a look. We've found something. Excuse me. Liu Haiying gave a quick nod and hurried to the deepest part of the cave to join the team of researchers. Feng Heng and the others exchanged glances and followed him. We found it. We found it. Several researchers were shouting excitedly. Liu Haiying quickly went over to inspect the find, unable to hide the smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Zaka, curious, asked, what did you find? The Eastern Federation once initiated the New Human Project. In fact, besides the records of the ancient humans, we've also discovered a small portion of Titan-related technology. Li Zixuan came up to Feng Heng's group and explained softly, that includes the space-faring vessel of the Titan race and their spatial warp technology. Huh? Zaka was shocked. You mean the Titan ship? Yes, you could call it that. Not far away, a researcher suddenly shouted, wreckage of the vessel. Everyone, come look. A group of researchers immediately gathered around him. It's the propulsion system of the Titan ship. With this, there's hope of solving several issues with warp propulsion. Liu Haiying instructed the team to carefully handle the wreckage. Only after it was securely packed in a metal container did he return to Feng Heng's group. Feng Heng, we've confirmed that we've found a part of the Titan ship. With this, along with the technology we obtained from the spawn starships, it's only a matter of time before we develop spatial warp technology. We still don't fully understand the dangers of the game, but the Eastern Federation is already making evacuation plans. If an uncontrollable danger arises, we will use the Titan ship to escort a group of people off the planet and completely break free from the Black Fog's control. As for the rest... Liu Haiyang paused, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. We will stay behind and see what the Black Fog really is. If it tries to consume us, we'll fight it with everything we have. I understand. Fang Heng got the picture. No wonder the Eastern Federation had been trying to infiltrate the Western Federation. What they truly needed was the spawn starship technology from the Western Federation. Fang Heng, we need your help. The spawn system allows access to high-tier materials. Many of them are essential for building the Titan ship. The Eastern Federation is willing to cooperate and exchange for those materials. Please trust in our sincerity. We're ready to make deals. That's worth considering. Fang Heng stroked his chin. Using the full strength of the Eastern Federation to help him grind spawn contribution points? That sounded great. So the next mission objective was clear. Start using the ship for short-distance transitions, grind hard for spawn contribution points. Get the points up, level up the ship enough for the Eastern Federation to develop the Titan warp vessel. At the same time, search for missions related to the seed of Ouroboros, and by devouring them, rapidly enhance the liquor swarm's strength. So, Fang Heng looked around at the gathered players. Time to start grinding. Chapter 2965, a plan 2 months later. Aboard the Nether Sea starship vessel. In the cultivation chamber, Fang Heng suddenly opened his eyes. The Undead Council's accumulation over tens of thousands of years was a valuable treasure for him. As he refined his mental strength and soul power, his ability to control and comprehend the undead aura had improved significantly. By now, Fang Heng could feel that he had reached a stage where he could wield undead power with complete fluency. Fang Heng raised his head and looked at the image of the Undead Council's chairman, GRG, on the screen. GRG nodded with satisfaction, his eyes filled with praise. He said, "Very good, Fang Heng. You are the most talented scholar I've ever seen. In just 2 months, you've already reached the level of complete integration. Thank you, mentors, for your careful guidance." During this period, Fang Heng had spent most of his time grinding. The primary focus was cultivating necromancy. Necromancy progressed mainly through completing missions and energy infusion, and had significant shortcomings in spell control and mastery. Many things that players considered basic were completely unfamiliar to Fang Heng. Therefore, on the starship, connected to the Undead Council via remote signal, Fang Heng received daily one-on-one cultivation guidance from the Undead Council instructors. No need to be polite. That's all for today. Also, there was news yesterday. Rumor has it that the God King from the Holy Realm has emerged from seclusion. It's said he comprehended a new kind of power, made some arrangements within the Holy Court, and then returned to closed-door cultivation. Today, someone from the Holy Court will be coming to negotiate with us. It's expected that both sides will enter a period of peace. Fang Heng nodded to himself. The Holy Court hadn't gained any real advantage in the war with the undead. Although they were technically still at war, there had been no real conflict for some time. The Undead Council, of course, remained on alert, wary of the revived God King launching a new offensive. But it seemed this new God King had a good grasp of the situation. He came out of seclusion just to talk peace. Meanwhile, in the Death Realm, after the Death Realm orb was teleported into the undead world, the Dark Clan gradually became familiar with the new world. As the new world developed further, the Dark Clan's loyalty toward Fang Heng also steadily grew. Conditions in the Death Realm continued to worsen, with over 90% of the territory now occupied by disaster. Those Dark Clan members who refused to enter the New World and preferred death had also gradually fallen in battle against disaster. The Dark Clan's approval rating in the Underworld Lord Advancement mission had unknowingly risen to 87%. If it hadn't been for Fang Heng and the Undead Council's support, the Death Realm would have already been completely devoured by disaster. Fang Heng and the Undead Council both found the Death Realm's situation strange. Proust had been in the Nether River recovering since his last serious injury. In theory, he should have finished recovering and launched another attack on the Death Realm by now. Why had it been so long with no activity? Was he preparing something big? In truth, Fang Heng had other plans for the Death Realm. If Proust still didn't awaken, he was planning to launch an attack himself. Honestly, if it were just Proust, Fang Heng wouldn't be worried. The problem was the existence of Mu Kinkson, a cultivator, which made things more complicated. He needed to plan carefully. On another front, Fang Heng also initiated a new round of large-scale screening within the world of the vampires. Suspicious individuals within the vampires were investigated to ensure the purity of the bloodline. This was to prevent infiltration by other hostile forces. Additionally, he cooperated with the Eastern Federation to conduct unlocking training for vampire players. The vampires were, aside from the zombie clones, his most powerful subordinates. Feng Heng began unlocking dimensional strength levels for them, significantly boosting their combat strength. Especially with his frequent use of the Vampire Gate skill. Several times, after accepting tasks related to the vampire spawns, Feng Heng used the Vampire Gate to summon vampire warriors into the real world for combat training. At the same time, he crazily farmed spawn contribution points and tasks related to the Seed of Ouroboros through the spawn mission system. Currently, the Seed of Ouroboros had reached level 12, unlocking a third modification slot. With the cooperation of the Eastern Federation, Feng Heng's contribution points skyrocketed. He exchanged them for high-tier spawn weapons, fully arming the starship. In the spawn evaluation system, Feng Heng's starship had already reached the maximum level rating, Max. The Federation, after analyzing the remnants of the Titan alien species, successfully developed spatial warp technology. They also purchased 2 small spawn ship keys from Feng Heng and then modularized the ships. Technically, it was a hybrid of Titan and spawn starships. The Eastern Federation had successfully acquired interstellar travel capabilities. In just over 2 months, working with Feng Heng, they built 32 small starships, forming a large interstellar fleet centered around him. Feng Heng now faced his biggest problem, a shortage of spawn points. Even though the ship was grinding missions 24/7, traveling across worlds to complete spawn commissions and collect resources in exchange for points, the consumption rate was just as high. Exchanging keys and components for 32 small ships, plus upgrading the main ship's cabins and defense modules, had already consumed a lot. Feng Heng didn't hesitate to use all the points he had saved over the past month to redeem the highest-tier spawn weapon, the Star Eye. The Star Eye was a top-tier weapon designed specifically by the spawn to deal with the Seed of Ouroboros. Its power could even damage SSS-level Ouroboros insect nests. Feng Heng was intrigued by it the moment it became available in the exchange list. With this weapon, he might actually be able to challenge the Seed of Ouroboros in the Death Realm. Unfortunately, even after acquiring the blueprint, it still required the construction of 24 positioning devices at target locations. Each tower cost a huge amount to build. Also, after the Star Eye was completed, every shot would cost a massive amount of contribution points. Even though his contribution farming rate was terrifying to others, at this pace, it would still take several more months to complete everything. There was no other way. He could only keep grinding. He hoped to finish everything before Proust revived. Feng Heng sighed at how little time he had to grow, still starting from scratch to accumulate resources, unlike other major forces that had tens of thousands of years of accumulated wealth to spend freely. Chapter 2966, The Fleet Main Control Room of the Ship. Mr. Feng, we've been waiting for you for a long time. Zaka and Chen Yu had both been in good spirits lately. Upon seeing Feng Heng return, they immediately reported the latest progress of the ship. Currently, the resources of this world have already been mostly divided up. In addition, the Flying Squirrel tribe has been cooperating with us very smoothly and is also hoping to join our fleet. As their strength gradually grew, the team encountered quite a few spawn alliances while gathering contributions and materials. Many races were willing to join Feng Heng's team to form an interstellar expedition fleet together. The Flying Squirrel tribe was one of the more recent encounters. During a mission, they witnessed Feng Heng's mutant worm creatures modifying a ship and were instantly amazed. They immediately clung to him and, together with Feng Heng and the Federation, shared the world's resources. Hint, the Flying Squirrel Fleet, 5, has temporarily joined the player's interstellar fleet. The player's current fleet count has increased to 125. The player's fleet level has increased to level 72. Hint, the current overall strength of the Nethersea Fleet has entered the top 100 of the Spawn Alliance rankings. Current rank, 98, Li Zixuan nodded and said, recently, we partially deciphered a stone slab discovered in the ancient human world. From it, we found some descriptions. After translating, we discovered a species called God. This species may be the root cause of the crisis faced by the Titan race. From the descriptions, the power of the God is extremely strong. It seems the Titans might have offended them and were gradually forced into a desperate situation. God. Feng Heng murmured and furrowed his brows. This is all the information we currently have, Li Zixuan said with a nod. We will continue to research and hope to find more valuable information. Chen Yu picked up the conversation and said, Mr. Feng, let's put aside the ancient matters for now. There's something we need to handle. We just received information from an alien species within the Alliance. Oh? What did they say? It's a mission invitation, related to the Seed of Ouroboros. Some Spawn Alliance races are currently undertaking a mission to eliminate an SSS-level Seed of Ouroboros insect nest. Fang Heng's heart stirred. An SSS-level insect nest. The allied races weren't weak. Chen Yu continued, the initiator of the mission is the Shadow Clan. From the provided information, the Shadow Clan has recruited many fleet forces and started the mission line to eliminate the SSS rank insect nest 20 days ago. Perhaps our fleet entering the top 100 rankings caught their attention. The Shadow Clan sent us a mission invitation, asking us to join in clearing out the seed of our Ouroboros insect nest. Fang Heng narrowed his eyes. Recently, as the honor level of the spawns gradually increased, Fang Heng's communication access within the spawn system also unlocked step by step. He had browsed some public data in the spawn mainframe regarding the seed of Ouroboros. Any entity above a certain strength level was categorized as an SSS-level disaster within the spawn system. For example, the one in the Death Realm was considered an SSS-level entity within the spawn rating system. An SSS-level insect nest would have extremely high strength. Right. We also learned some additional details about the mission. To complete the mission, the Shadow Clan had preemptively invited many allied fleets and also redeemed a high-tier star eye from the spawn system, which the Iron-Eating tribe is good at constructing. The current front lines may still be short on manpower, and the Shadow Clan is continuing to recruit support. I see. Fang Heng expressed interest. To the side, the captain of the Flying Squirrel tribe shook his head repeatedly upon hearing this. Mr. Fang Heng, the Shadow Clan ranks among the top 3 in strength within the entire Spawn Alliance and possesses powerful modification fleets. However, they are known for their erratic temperaments and are difficult to cooperate with. You don't recommend it? Definitely not. We might suffer losses. But if we directly refuse them, it could offend the Shadow Clan, who may see it as a sign of disrespect and become hostile. HMPH. Arkley snorted coldly, expressing disdain. Getting mad over not being given face? They think too highly of themselves. Fang Heng signaled Arkley to calm down. He had only seen the star eye mentioned in the spawn descriptions. He couldn't yet judge their actual power. This could be a good opportunity to assess them. And also, the seed of Ouroboros. The current level 13 seed of Ouroboros had only 3 modification slots and couldn't simultaneously load stealth, biological cannon, and division abilities. An SSS-level insect nest would correspond to a much higher cocoon level. It should be able to reach level 15 by then and unlock a new modification slot. With luck, he might even discover other better modification options. Moreover, it was a good chance to observe the high-tier combat strength of the Spawn Alliance and make an evaluation. Fang Heng nodded and said, send a response to the Shadow Clan. Tell them we're very interested in the mission and will head over as soon as possible to assist in completing it. Huh? The Flying Squirrel tribe clearly looked uneasy. No rush. We're just going over to take a look. Alright. The Flying Squirrel tribe had previously suffered quite a loss at the hands of the Shadow Clan. After thinking for a bit, they nodded and said, we're willing to go with you, but if things go poorly, we will withdraw. Of course. VO129 Interstellar World. A ship base set up by the Western District Federation within the game. Captain Jisel and a group of senior officials from various departments of the Federation gathered in the meeting room. Something was strange. Recently, within the spawn system, the overall contribution level of the human faction had been rising at an unusually fast pace. In just 2 months, the entire alliance level had jumped by 2 full tiers. This level up speed made Captain Jisel feel very suspicious, so a few days ago, he attempted to contact the upper ranks of the spawn system to inquire. The upper ranks of the spawn system had always shown a cold attitude toward humans. It wasn't until today that he finally received a reply. The spawn executives explained that the system's faction level rankings were calculated based on the performance of their entire planetary group. What did that mean? On this planet, aside from the Western District Federation, were there other federations cooperating with the spawns? Captain Jisel suddenly had a bad feeling and recalled the giant ship he had seen while evacuating. Could it be Fang Heng? No way, no way. Jisel shook his head and dismissed the seemingly impossible answer. Back then, the ship was just an empty shell. In 2 months, at most, it would have been completed but capable of performing missions already. Not to mention, leveling up 2 major stages required an astronomical amount of contribution points. It couldn't possibly be Fang Heng. Could there be a system error? The good news was that as their entire team tier increased, the faction could now exchange for higher tier war machinery, and many high tier missions that were previously unavailable were now accessible. However, due to Fang Heng's recent disappearance and the impact of the Emery incident, the Federation's mission completion efficiency had once again slowed down. Chapter 2967, Entrance without Fang Heng. The Western District Federation lost the ability to complete high-tier missions. The star map was still under construction, but progress was slow. In fact, the Western District Federation didn't really want the star map to be completed too quickly. They had been deliberately dragging things out. Without the assistance of Fang Heng and Charlene, the Western District Federation's ability to gain experience points had significantly declined. It had taken them over a month just to complete a single high-tier mission. Report. Come in. Under the gaze of the Western District Federation's top leaders in the meeting room, a young soldier walked in and reported, Captain, your urgent mission request has been approved by the President. We can proceed to the target star system at any time to carry out the mission. Good. Captain Jisel stood up and glanced around at everyone. Everyone, the mission will begin in 10 minutes. Get ready. 2 days earlier, Captain Jisel had accepted an urgent mission issued by the spawn system. It was a mission related to the seed of Ouroboros. Its difficulty level was SSS the highest. Under normal circumstances, neither Captain Jisel nor the Western District Federation would have been willing to take on such a high-risk mission. But this mission was a bit different. It was more of a support-type mission, and several factions were participating simultaneously. The Western District Federation thought they could tag along and maybe get lucky. Who knew? They might even find the seed of Ouroboros. At the very least, they could meet with other allied forces of the spawns, try to build relationships, gain experience fighting alongside allies, and broaden their horizons. Therefore, the Federation assembled an accompanying observation group to join the fleet on the mission. Among them was even a team of experts from the Presidential Palace, much to Captain Jisel's displeasure. Prepare for departure. With the roar of 7 ships, pale white light spots enveloped the ships, which then entered transition mode one after another. Half an hour later, the human fleet emerged from the transition passage. Captain Jisel's Western District Federation fleet arrived side by side at the battlefield. Through the ship's barrier, they saw a vast expanse of red creep-covered terrain, shrouded in disaster. Scattered across the creep were countless lower-tier insect nests, like scars on a diseased body. Captain Jisel looked grim. The strength of the SSS-level insect nest was truly terrifying. Lower-tier nests were everywhere, and the Western District Federation had never faced such a harsh environment before. Given the current strength level of their fleet, they could probably only handle the periphery and deal with the lower-tier nests at best. The senior officials from various departments of the Federation were gathered in the control room of the main starship, observing the situation. Besides monitoring the swarm, they were also watching the Spawn Alliance. Unbelievable. The power gap was huge. Allied fleets from other factions were organized in groups of dozens of ships, many of which were giant-sized. In comparison, the Western District Federation's strength was barely worth mentioning. The other allied fleets are organized in hundreds, equipped with higher-tier gear. Our strength is indeed a bit lacking. No need for self-pity. We just started later than them. What they can do now, we'll be able to do in the future. For now, we need to rely on the power of the spawns and find ways to grow stronger ourselves. Let's treat this as an opportunity to broaden our horizons. Agreed. Everyone nodded. The ships entered battle mode. Cannons mounted on the ships began to deploy, coordinating their attacks on the swarm. Meanwhile, the observation team quietly studied the other races' warships. Generally speaking, most species relied on spawn-class ships in battle. However, the ships differed in form and quality. Most had undergone racial-specific modifications, such as anti-magic shells, space barriers, condensed space cannons, and other unconventional defensive systems and artifact-grade weapons. By comparison, their own ships looked pitiful. They were pure spawn-manufactured models, with almost no custom modifications. Beep, beep. A soft sound came from the control hall. A message from a spawn-affiliated alien fleet located behind us. We're attempting to decode it. After a moment, once decoding was complete, the researcher looked at the translated message on the screen and frowned. Captain Jisel asked, "What did it say?" "They told us to move to the rear right and stay out of their way. They don't want us wandering in the main war zone and messing up their deployment. They told us to get lost." "What's that supposed to mean?" A staff member swallowed hard and softly said, "The Shadow Clan, the leader of the Allied forces, has already launched a coordinated assault on the central SSS-level insect nest. Each fleet has been assigned specific zones to attack. We weren't invited to join the strategic planning." Captain Jisel's face darkened. "Captain, if we don't move, they'll run us over." Bang. Captain Jisel slammed his fist on the ship's table in anger and gritted his teeth. Evade to the rear right zone. Damn it. They had been too naive. In a world governed by the law of the jungle, none of the Spawn Allied forces saw them as equals. Only strength commanded respect. It was all because of the idiots from the Federation's inspection department and the Presidential Palace. If either Fang Heng or Charlene were here, they wouldn't be in such a weak position. Forget those barbaric aliens. Let's just follow the procedure. There's a gap between us and the high-tier Spawn allies right now, but that's nothing to be afraid of. Give us time, we'll catch up. In the observation group, Vian, a member of the Presidential Palace's expert team, tried to save face. Let's fall back for now and avoid conflict with the Allied forces. The Western District Federation's 7 ships slowly retreated to the rear right, avoiding the alien fleet. Just then, flashes of light began appearing in the forward left zone. The flickering lights quickly formed a wave. It was an interstellar fleet. Judging by the intensity of the transition beams, another alien fleet had just arrived at the battlefield. Looking toward the center, a fleet of over 90 ships entered the field. Their high-tier energy beam weapons were activated instantly, unleashing a concentrated barrage on the swarm ahead. Through the windows, the Federation soldiers watched the fierce battle outside with a hint of envy. The firepower of large fleets was on a completely different level compared to their small team. When would they be able to build such a massive fleet of their own? 10 years? Or 20? Chapter 2968, Battle Conference. Jaisal took a deep breath. The foundation of humanity was weak, and it was precisely because of the influence of the Black Fog game that a portion of humans underwent evolution and gained strength beyond ordinary people. Do not complain or blame others. Work hard and accumulate slowly. Eventually, they would surpass them. While he was thinking, a staff member of the starship suddenly noticed a new message, was momentarily stunned, then looked up and reported, "Captain, we have received a message from the Shadow Clan of the Alliance, inviting us to the Scarlet Star-class ship to discuss the battle plan together." Everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing this, then exchanged glances. What did that mean? The Alliance had just told them to stay away, so why were they suddenly inviting them to participate in a battle planning discussion? Something was off. Were they planning to use them as cannon fodder? Alright, let's go and take a look. Jaisal made a prompt decision. Their strength might be weak, and they could slowly work to become stronger, but if they didn't even dare to attend such a battle meeting, then they couldn't blame others for looking down on them. The starship's internal transition passage was quickly constructed, and Jaisal, along with several Federation members, used the teleportation passage to head to the Scarlet Star-class ship. Welcome to the Scarlet Ship. The Crocodile Clan was a branch of the Orc race and ranked among the top 10 in overall strength within the Spawn Alliance. To humans, members of the Crocodile Clan appeared ugly, with faces naturally bearing a fierce aura and somewhat bulky physiques. Several Crocodile Clan members greeted Jaisal's group in a language they weren't very fluent in, their eyes carrying a hint of curiosity. "Only a few of you came? Are the others still on the way?" Vian nodded and replied, "Yes, just the few of us." That seems off. The Crocodile Clan members looked puzzled and said, "We received more than one teleportation request." "Forget it, maybe something went wrong somewhere. Anyway, please come with me, I'll show you to your seats." A Crocodile Clan guard led Captain Jaisal and the group of players to a large round meeting table. Although the meeting hadn't started yet, many aliens had already gathered around the round table, speaking in various languages. Unfortunately, Jaisal and the others couldn't understand a single word of the alien languages. After a while, the awkward-sounding voice of the Crocodile Clan rang out again behind them, "Your companions have arrived." Companions? Jaisal and the other players instinctively turned their heads to look. Huh? What the hell? Why was it Feng Heng? Feng Heng and a few others entered the conference hall under the guidance of a Crocodile Clan guard, then walked toward them. So the companions the Crocodile Clan referred to earlier were Feng Heng? Did they also receive the same mission? After entering the hall, Feng Heng also noticed Captain Jaisal and his group, looking slightly surprised. After sitting down, he raised a hand and greeted, "Captain Jaisal, long time no see. I didn't expect to run into you here. What a coincidence." Jaisal and Vian quickly noticed a few players following Feng Heng, and their expressions subtly changed. They were from the Eastern Federation. And they were high-ranking officials of the Eastern Federation. They were from the military department. Although Jaisal had never met with the Western District Federation military in person, the Western District Federation had already obtained this kind of basic intelligence information. How had they gotten here? Could it be? Captain Jaisal immediately came to a conclusion. It seemed that after Feng Heng left with the starship, he had contacted the Eastern Federation. He hadn't expected the Eastern Federation to have such tight control over intelligence. They hadn't heard even a single word about this recently. Captain Jaisal's expression turned gloomy as he glanced at the two experts from the presidential palace beside him. These idiots. If they hadn't been stirring up trouble everywhere, the Western region military would already be earning points with Feng Heng. How had he let the Eastern Federation take the lead? Captain Jaisal nodded toward Feng Heng, pretending to ask casually, "Are these your friends?" Feng Heng replied frankly, "Yes, they're friends from the Eastern Federation. We've reached some cooperation agreements." The two Eastern Federation military captains also nodded toward Captain Jaisal. "Mr. Jaisal, we've heard of your name before. We didn't expect to meet under such circumstances. It's a pleasure. Although there was an undercurrent of competition between the Eastern and Western Federations, on the surface, things remained calm, and they exchanged pleasantries. Jisoo sighed inwardly and asked, I didn't expect the Eastern Federation to have completed its starship construction. When did that happen? It's been about a month or two. It's a confidential matter for the Eastern Federation. We hope Minister Jisoo can keep it secret. Of course. Jisoo's heart was a mix of emotions. Vian's expression was also conflicted. A month or two ago? Wasn't that exactly when the Western Federation and Fang Hang fell out? Vian was just about to ask a few probing questions when a Crocodile Clan member walked to the head of the table, cleared his throat, and motioned for everyone to put on the signal bracelets on the table. Fang Hang picked one up and put it on. Soon, the voice of the Crocodile Clan was translated into human language via the converter and directly echoed in his mind. The mission target of the spawns this time was to eliminate the final SSS-level insect nest. The mission difficulty was high. The Crocodile Clan began explaining the mission in detail. Fang Hang frowned slightly, finding it odd. Wasn't the mission supposed to be initiated by the Shadow Clan? They had also received an invitation from the Shadow Clan. Why was it that only the Crocodile Clan was hosting from beginning to end? Mr. Fang Hang. After explaining the battle plan for a while, the Crocodile Clan captain shifted the topic to Fang Hang, stood up, and looked at him solemnly. This is humanity's first time participating in a joint alliance battle mission. After the discussion, the alliance has assigned the Nether Sea fleet of humans to be responsible for the construction and defense of District 6 of the Star Eye domain. Does the human side find this battle plan acceptable? Captain Jisoo and his group, who had remained silent, were shocked upon hearing this, and all turned to look at Fang Hang. What? A fleet? What was going on? Since when did Fang Hang have a fleet? Fang Hang remained calm and asked, alright, and what about the final profit distribution? The mission system of the spawns will provide corresponding mission points. As for the later final assault, I'm afraid humans won't be able to participate. This is our first collaboration, and humanity hasn't proven its strength. The Alliance won't take the risk of including you. If the humans still have energy after completing the mission, they may assist with logistics and materials transport. The conference hall fell briefly silent as all the attending aliens turned to look at Fang Hang. Rear defense logistics missions were essentially marginal tasks. They were exhausting, unglamorous, and offered little reward. Fang Hang shrugged. Alright, we accept. It's our first time working together, please take care of us. The aliens looked away. The Crocodile Clan was quite satisfied, thinking the humans were rather sensible. Since that was the case, once the mission was complete, they could throw them a few leftover scraps. Very well. Then the Nether Sea Fleet shall assist in defense. Once the Star Eye is completed, finally, I must warn all allied friends, do your duty, and do not let yourselves delay the entire Alliance's plan of action. Chapter 2969, Logistics. After the meeting concluded, everyone returned to their respective fleets through the teleportation passage. Captain Jisoo and Vian were still in a daze. So, what exactly just happened? What's going on with the fleet? Why didn't we receive any intelligence on this? It would be one thing if the Eastern Federation had secretly built a single warship. But now it was an entire fleet. At least 16 ships are required to be considered a fleet. Captain, don't get agitated. Could it be that Fang Hang was already working with the Eastern Federation? Is it possible that Fang Hang and the Eastern Federation used some means to control an alien races? That's impossible. There must have been a mistake, misinformation. Enough. Jisoo slammed the table, cutting off the wild speculations from the Presidential Palace's expert group. We stick to the mission. The task assigned to the humans is to assist in building the 6th Prism Crystal Tower. We'll head there now, and everything will become clear once we arrive. Understood. 7 ships immediately began short-range transitions to the designated coordinates. 10 minutes later, the transition was complete. The experts all looked out of the ship. More than 100 ships, forming a layered fleet in 3 rows. The artifact systems installed on the ships were continuously unleashing colorful beams of light, completely shredding the incoming swarm. At the center of the fleet was a massive, well-equipped elite warship. Look at that there. Yes, that's the insignia of the Eastern Federation. Roughly 30 or so ships in the fleet were flying the Eastern Federation's banner. Inside the cabin, the people of the Western District Federation were silent, their faces showing shock. It was all true. The so-called Nether Sea Fleet led by Fang Hang was real. No wonder the Human Alliance's contribution points had increased so drastically in recent times. It was all thanks to Fang Hang. Without Fang Hang, they might not even have had access to a high-tier mission like this one. The expert team members' expressions gradually turned grim. The Western District Federation had spent years secretly investing to gain an advantage in interstellar affairs, believing they had the upper hand in military power and would gain a louder voice in negotiations. Only now did they realize the joke was on them. Even the Eastern Federation's fleet power surpassed theirs. Jisol ordered, "Send a message to the Nether Sea Fleet. Ask if there's anything we can assist with." "Yes, understood." Soon, a reply was received. The fleet welcomed the Western District Federation team to temporarily join the effort against the swarm, but once part of the fleet, they would not be allowed to act independently. Vian, feeling humiliated like never before, gritted his teeth and said, "Fang Heng. Don't think that. Shut up, Vian. I don't care who your backers are. Sit down and behave. If I catch you pulling anything, I'll execute you on the spot for war crimes." Jisol glared at Vian. He was furious at these useless allies. Even now, they still didn't understand the situation. Who was really in control of this fleet? Hadn't the meeting made that obvious? The Eastern Federation had only been accompanying Fang Heng. The true leader of the Nether Sea Fleet was Fang Heng. The more Jisol looked at this group of fools, the angrier he became. If it weren't for these deadweights, it would have been the Western District Federation working with Fang Heng right now. It would have been them gaining control of those 30-plus ships. Now, the Easterners had taken the lead. All the advantages they had built over more than a decade had evaporated. Forget building a star map. Vian, stunned by the verbal assault, was just about to retaliate when the expert group leader held him back in his seat. "Vian, we'll discuss this after we return. Our task here remains to observe the various races, collect intelligence, and assist in clearing the SSS-level insect nest. Everything else can wait until we're back in the Western District Federation." Meanwhile, Fang Heng was also carrying out his battle plan. After receiving the mission from the Alliance Council, the fleet successfully transitioned to the construction area in District 6 of the Star Eye, setting up a defensive line. After repelling the swarm, Fang Heng convened a meeting with the ship groups. Chen Yu nodded and said, "Boss Fang, just as we expected, the Alliance interests, led by the Shadow Clan, have seized control of the Council. They're using their position to pressure other allied members, squeezing out more benefits. As a rising power, it's not surprising we're being exploited." The Flying Squirrel Tribe's ships, better suited for terrain scouting and mineral resource collection, had already scanned the battlefield. Their captain reported, "The swarm in District 6 is of a higher level. We expect a major assault soon. The Shadow Clan invited us here with bad intentions. On one hand, they want to test our strength, on the other, they want to use our power to fight the mutant insects. That's why they arranged for us to protect and fully assist the Iron-Eating Tribe in building the Star Eye." The Spirit Tribe representative said, "Boss Fang, the meeting didn't mention post-war resource distribution. Typically, after a war, resources are divided among the fleets. This time, it's likely they plan to exclude us from the reward." The Western District Federation's representatives also attended the meeting, but they couldn't even get a word in, just silently listened. They got the message. Do the work, but no share in the reward? Disgusting. The group murmured among themselves. Arkley curled his lip. The Shadow Clan? Trying to use Boss Fang? What a joke. They have no idea who's really using who. Gui, Minister of the Eastern Federation's military department, asked with some concern, "Boss Fang, should we try to reach out to the Shadow Clan?" "No need." Fang Heng stroked his chin. They clearly didn't see his team as equals, only as tools. So there was no point in wasting words. No rush. We're new here. Let's observe for now. At this stage, let's focus on protecting the Iron-Eating Tribe and completing the construction of the Prism Tower. Fang Heng had his plan. He had 3 goals for participating in this alliance mission. First, to observe the construction progress of the Star Eye and evaluate its actual combat effectiveness. Second, to find a way to ultimately obtain the seed of Ouroboros from the SSS-level insect nest. Third, to figure out how to gain more honor points and contribution points for the spawns. Take it slow. No need to rush. Fang Heng was thinking. He'd heard the Iron-Eating Tribe had special abilities in construction. Maybe he could find a way to approach them and steal some of their tech. Just as the meeting was about to adjourn,